Many years ago, an extra-dimensional storm broke out on Earth. In the course of this, a large number of mythical creatures from other dimensions were discovered. Gods, ghosts, werewolves, angels, demons, elves. Each of these unearthly beings belongs to its own class. There are 4 of them in total: mortal, legendary, epic, and mythical. Whatever ideas they have about them, their incredible abilities and destructive power will greatly exceed all expectations. People, in turn, belong to the lower class. However, if you put a lot of effort into strengthening your body and spirit, you can improve your class. In addition to constantly improving spiritual power, there is another way to achieve this. This is a way to significantly accelerate the process of evolution. Its essence is to hunt unearthly creatures from other dimensions and appropriate their crystals to yourself. However, the places where they have to live are famous for their danger, and going there is a deadly risk. An older man with gray hair on both sides of his head and thick eyebrows of the same color calls Zhu Wen. He has to repeat his name twice and much louder, because the young guy with blue hair does not hear him, quietly snuffling on his folded arms, which now serve him instead of a soft pillow. Having received no reaction, the teacher exhales and looks down at the floor. The last director had a pretty high opinion of this guy. In one of their meetings, this man with light blonde hair and a sandy-colored long coat tells him about 2 types of geniuses. Mr. Q Bai follows him, listening intently. A man refers Zhu Wen to the first type, while everyone else belongs to the second. And if at first teacher Q could agree with his words, now, when the guy who jumped up from his seat runs to the exit from the office, he thinks that the director was mistaken about him. In the rays of the golden evening sun, Zhu Wen runs to the sports field of their educational institution. With a heavy exhalation, he settles down on the concrete tile, leaning against the iron grid of the football field. He is looking at a bookmark-like, but unremarkable-looking white smartphone in his hands. His life changed significantly when he got this phone. Being a good student and someone who is constantly looking for new ways of self-improvement, he quickly gave up on all this because of the game on this phone. To access it, you need to unlock it with a drop of blood, and then click on the icon of the only application on the desktop. Zhu Wen casually looks around, makes sure that no one is nearby, and again brings the needle to his finger. The second drop gives you the opportunity to create your own character in the game. Now his little pixel copy with the same dark brown hair, and even a hairstyle exactly like the guy's, looks at him through the screen. By improving the skills of the character in the game, you can quickly and, most importantly, safely improve yourself in reality. The young man quickly moves his fingers across the phone screen, following the instructions in the game. Right now he has to defeat a mortal being, a mighty ant. His little copy follows the movement of his fingers on the screen and performs all the activated actions. There are many geniuses in society who have developed their spiritual strength by the age of 16. However, among them Zhu Wen is the only one who was able to improve his spirit through meditation and asceticism. He was able to do this without any outside help. Mr. Q Bai has been thinking about this for a long time. All the teachers and students of this school assumed that Zhu Wen would definitely achieve great success in the future. With his strength, it wouldn't be difficult for him to take first place in the upcoming martial arts skills test. But no one could have thought that just a month ago there would be a daredevil who would dare to challenge Zhu Wen himself. The crowd surrounding the new student of their school is constantly whispering about such rash courage. Someone exclaims that it is complete madness only to transfer to another school, but to challenge the one who occupies an honorable first place in it. The crowd disperses as soon as they see Zhu Wen, who has come to this noise. He puts his hands in the pockets of his sweatpants and indifferently asks the girl if they have met before. She doesn't say anything except that she tells him to attack. There is a flash of confidence in her light blue eyes, and she deftly prevents Zhu Wen's reception. Her resinous blue hair develops slightly as she lands on the shiny gym floor. The students look at her in shock, then at the lying Zhu Wen. This girl, it's definitely because of her, Q Bai thinks. After Jing defeated him with just one move, Zhu Wen seemed to have been replaced. Now all he does is sleep in all the lessons. Zhu Wen moves the joystick, directing the character to collect all the fallen crystals. These crystals remain from defeated enemies, and if the winner absorbs them, they have a positive effect on him and improve his skills. In this game, the user can also see the characteristics that cannot be done in real life. Zhu Wen is in the mortal class, and just a month ago his parameters were extremely low. Now his strength has risen by 2 units, his speed and body have increased by 1, and his spirit has risen by 3. The guy thinks about the fact that, continuing to improve only with the help of meditations through suffering alone, he probably would not have been able to get such a result even in a few years. The only thing that upsets him is the inability to transfer the obtained crystals from the game to the real world. In that case, he could live happily ever after by selling low-level crystals. He is only distracted from the game for a moment, but this is enough for a red mutant ant to suddenly appear out of nowhere and cause damage to him. His speed and strength are much higher than ordinary ants, and if Zhu Wen had enough time, he would be able to defeat him. However, there are more and more monsters around him. Zhu Wen does not notice a girl with short cherry-colored hair not far from him. Her hair is in harmony with the clothes in beige and pale pink tones on her. Her cream hoodie has 3 cute bows, its sleeves almost completely cover her small arms, and all this creates an unusual but refined contrast with her dark rough shorts. Her sudden visit surprises and worries Zhu Wen at the same time. The main thing is that the purpose of her visit here was not to search for Zhu Wen. He thinks about it along with the thoughts that in no case should he let her know about the secret of this phone right now. Unfortunately for Zhu Wen, she stands right in front of him. He hurries to find out what she wants, and the girl opposite relaxes in her face. The reason for the search for Zhu Wen was the upcoming final exam, which will test the combat skills of students. She holds out her palm and invites him to join her team. It seems to him that he misheard, so he clarifies her intentions from Fan Josie. He is interested in why the girl chose him and wants to team up with him for the final exam, but his thoughts are in the game. His character is about to lose all his powers. As it turned out, Fan Josie needs the highest score on this exam, so she is going to recruit strong students to her team. According to her, Zhu Wen is a great fit. With a barely noticeable longing on his face, the guy tells her that he is no longer the Zhu Wen that the whole school knows. The girl contradicts his words. For her, Zhu Wen will always be Zhu Wen. Even after a while, despite the fact that he has changed, she still considers him the only one from Guide whom she considers a worthy rival. The guy asks her about Jing. It is probably better suited for the composition of the Fan Josie team. It becomes sudden news for him that Jing, it turns out, has long been transferred from their school. Josie says she has no idea where exactly she will continue her studies now, but she is sure of one thing for sure: she is above the mortal class. She notes that Jing's appearance at their school was as unusual as her disappearance. It might seem that she came to their school just to challenge Zhu Wen. It seemed to her that she had known him for a long time, so she wanted to settle accounts with him. The guy remembers the image of the girl from the day when he first saw her in the walls of the gym, and assures that this cannot be. They really had never met before, so what kind of grievances could she have? He casually concludes about it and wraps his hands around the phone more comfortably. Fan Josie decides to leave this topic aside and resolve the issue with the team until the end. She again asks his opinion on this matter. She had no doubt that Zhu Wen would agree, so she is not at all surprised when he nods affirmatively to her request. She throws her backpack over her shoulder, saying at the exit from the site that 2 more participants have been found for the team. From now on, the 4 of them will have to train during practical classes so that on the day of the exam they can act together and understand each other. As soon as she moves away from the playground for a long distance, the guy again focuses all his attention on the game. The corner of his pinched lips lifts on one side, revealing something like a smile. He decides that he will check the characteristics at home after the battle, but the phone gets very hot in his hand and he drips scarlet liquid on the screen again. He wonders what kind of skill can be obtained from the ant he defeated, but the skill of his spiritual power has now been upgraded to the 7th level. The ash-haired youth is perplexed about Zhu Wen. Josie claims that this is not a joke, and Zhu Wen is now part of their team. The guys know he's strong enough, but he hasn't trained for a whole month, so they have doubts about him. It will probably be difficult for him to return to the previous level. One of them is sure that Zhu Wen is not the best candidate for their team for the purpose of taking first place during the combat skills test. A swarthy blonde man is talking about a certain Zhengyi. He is his old friend, so he offers to invite him instead of Zhu Wen. Confusion appears on Zhu Wen's face. This quick check significantly affects the future life of students. It plays a significant role in admission to a prestigious school and during employment. This test is a kind of opportunity to show your best side and get the opportunity to become a part of high society. Moreover, the safety of the others and the team depends on the strength of the teammates, so Zhu Wen understands the doubts of the other participants. Fan Ruoxi admits that Zhengyi is indeed an outstanding fighter, but she still thinks that Zhu Wen is more suitable. The blonde man, for the sake of justice, offers to conduct a small test for Zhu Wen with his consent. This will help them determine whether to keep him in the team or not. He declares that among all those present here, he is the weakest, so Zhu Wen must fight him. If he wins, he will definitely join their team. He considers it a fair way out of the situation. The guy does not mind, but he is afraid because of possible victims. The blonde repeats that the school has a strength meter, but, according to him, artificial numbers are boring. Tian Zhangdong continues to insist on a fight. Josie frowns. She is visited by different thoughts. It looks like they are really going to measure strength now. Tian Zhangdong makes excellent use of the thunderclap cultivation method. He mainly specializes in flashes of power, and the Thunder Fist skill is a great addition to all this. Zhu Wen often practiced meditation through suffering. However, he never bought life force crystals for better cultivation speed. His family probably has financial problems, so she won't be surprised at all if he doesn't have a life force skill. It seems to her that Zhu Wen, despite the fact that he agreed to conduct the test, will refuse. And so it happens. He suggests that the guys check everything on the school strength meter, but they grin at such a sudden change in his mood. He is really afraid, but this fear is not due to an actual fear of losing, but to the fact that he will send him to eternal sleep. They get to the force meter in one of the school corridors. Unable to decide who will be the first, Tian Zhangdong volunteers to start their trial. He needs his fists, getting closer to the meter with each step, takes aim and swings to strike. Zhu Wen recalls the small difference between this strength meter and the characteristics in the game. He is sure that if there is a difference, it is not significant at all. When he first found that mysterious phone with the game, his strength was only 7 units. Teacher Q Bai wanders along the corridor of the school, barely illuminated by the last orange rays of the evening sun on the horizon, and his attention is attracted by muffled sounds coming straight from the entertainment room. He stealthily approaches the slightly open door, deciding not to enter yet. Next, he is amazed and cannot believe his eyes at the level of Zhu Wen's strength. He probably drew conclusions only from what Zhu Wen showed. He could sleep soundly in class, but thereby save energy for diligent training. What is more incredible is this guy's skillful skill to use the most difficult punch. Thanks to him, he was now able to get a score of 10 units on the strength meter. Tian Zhangdong feels oppressed. He agrees with Zhu Wen joining their team, but warns not to get conceited just because of the fact that he is lucky to beat him now. One of the guys in the team is having fun with such careful control of his image by Tian Zhangdong. He is not going to give up, again overcoming the distance to the meter and strikes again. This time, 11 units of Tian Zhangdong's strength are flashing on the blue screen of the meter. The old confidence returns to his face. He smiles confidently. Zhu Wen definitely won't come out victorious this time. He thoughtfully examines the meter while Zhangdong assures him that there is nothing wrong with losing. Zhu Wen wonders if he will have to pay damages to the school if he accidentally breaks it, and Zhangdong promises to pay for it if he really breaks it. Teacher Q is still watching them and the surprise does not leave his face. Zhu Wen clasps his hands at a lock at chest level and it takes only a moment before he, using the skill of spiritual power, breaks the meter. Tian Zhangdong was sure that Zhu Wen was only pretending to be someone unknown. This device is designed to measure strength and its maximum limit is only 20 units. And previously he could say with confidence that Zhu Wen would barely be able to approach his level of strength. However, what he saw now made him doubt his beliefs. Q Bai remembers the words spoken by the last headmaster of the school. Is Zhu Wen really a genius? Although the maximum value of the power level of the meter does not exceed 20 units, you need to have a spiritual force skill at least at the 8th or 9th level to be able to break the device. Zhu Wen clarifies the seriousness of Tian Zhangdong's intention to pay for the damaged meter. The latter slaps him on the shoulder and nods affirmatively. Previously, they were classmates, but at the moment they are now together in the same team, so he can rely on him. Josie is sure that Zhu Wen is a much more interesting person than he is now. Soon after leaving their company, Zhu Wen slowly walks through the empty streets of the city. The sun has almost set. Only its last rays reach the roofs of skyscrapers, trying to cling to their ledges so that the darkness of the night does not completely engulf them. He recalls that this afternoon, Fan Ruoxi, coming to his playground, reminded him of a case from the past when Enjing voluntarily challenged him, a mere mortal. Although it is not an unknown fact that usually people who manage to move to the legendary class consider it beneath their dignity even to be near people from the mortal class. He does not understand how he could somehow cross her path, because he has never left guide in his life. He is pulled out of his thoughts by the vibration of the phone in his pants pocket. He accepts a call from his father, and he hurries to ask if his son will attend his wedding. The news of his father's wedding becomes sudden and arouses a little curiosity in Zhu Wen. He continues to walk slowly along the barely lit street while his father is distracted in order to send him a photo of his chosen one. A woman with purple hair barely reaching her shoulders, as Zhu Wen sees, opening a message with a photo, is called Yang Lan. Next, the father informs that their wedding ceremony will take place in Loyang in about a week. If Zhu Wen had a strong desire to attend the ceremony, he would still not be able to go, because during this period, the martial arts skills test will take place. He notifies his father about this and then asks about a metal cookie box at their house. The young man describes in detail the appearance of the box so that the father could have a more accurate idea. This is a square iron box, each side of which is about 30 centimeters. A cartoon bear is depicted on its lid, and it is dark green in color. This is the box that contained Zhu Wen's much-loved cookies. However, at the present time, cookies from this company have long been impossible to buy. He asks his father if he put the phone in it. At first, his father does not immediately understand him, but clarifies his appearance, an unremarkable white smartphone with a black screen, which even lacks any buttons. Zhu Wen's voice sounds lively, because this is exactly the phone he has in mind. It turns out that the phone does not belong to his father. The owner of this phone was his grandfather. The father laughs into the phone, admitting that he would have forgotten about this phone if Zhu Wen hadn't reminded him about it. Zhu Wen is driven by a genuine interest in finding out where his grandfather got this phone from. The father tells his son that during the restoration of Guide, his grandfather worked as a carpenter. He needed to repair a large number of old wooden buildings, so the period of his work lasted more than 1 year. On one of the working days, having stayed to work overtime, their team dug an old, almost collapsed well at the construction site. From its shallow depth, something unusually sparkled with an azure radiance. For a brief moment, it seemed to the workers that they had found a treasure and were about to become rich. The glowing something turned out to be an old wooden box. There were characteristic cracks on its lid, through which bright light made its way. There was a phone inside the box itself. They tested it for operability, but it turned off almost immediately, as if it was discharged. He already had no buttons and a charging connector at that time. The team of workers was very disappointed with this outcome. They quickly lost interest in the found thing, deciding that someone decided to play them in such a stupid way. Grandpa put the phone in his toolbox. The father says that during his youth he took the phone for repair, because it did not even turn on, and hoped to get at least some benefit from it. But the specialist assured that the smartphone was worth nothing. That's when he put the phone in the box. He grins briefly when he asks if his son also wanted to get money from him. Zhu Wen's mind is spinning with the idea that most likely no one has managed to turn on this phone before him. He tells his father that it would be a big mistake to exchange this phone, but he repeats that it is useless to hope to restore it. No one knows exactly how long he has been lying, and it is not known about his performance at all. It is either broken or completely discharged. The place where this phone was first found is the old town of Guide. It is there that the martial arts skills test will take place. If possible, Zhu Wen will try to find this well. For several days, Zhu Wen has been thinking about the mysterious phone. Now that his original location became known, he aroused even more interest in the guy. He still continues to sleep in all classes, skipping the lectures of teacher Q Bai, but trains hard with the team. The young man of short stature, about 160 centimeters, shouts, calling for the guy running ahead of him to stop. He doesn't listen to him, but stops when he bumps into someone. The guy with long blonde hair in front of him is silent, humbling him with an indifferent look. A short guy catches up with him and squats next to him. He asks if he's okay, but all his friend's attention is focused on the creepy tall young man. He doesn't even pay any attention to him when he apologizes. Tian Xiangdong regretfully announces that he will not be able to continue being a member of their team. His friend called him to his team, so he has to go. The preparation time is nearing completion. At such a moment it will be difficult to find a new strong participant. Zhu Wen talks about Tian Xiangdong's departure to Laizhai, but learns from him that he too is forced to leave the team for personal reasons. He does not disclose them, but offers his sincere apologies. Fan Josie looks guiltily at the floor. Now she looks like a little girl who is going to be scolded. Her voice trembles slightly. She makes great efforts to start a conversation, but Zhu Wen understands everything without words. He ruffles her strawberry red hair and apologizes. Probably someone wants to deal with him because of what innocent people suffered. Fan Ruoxi only needed a high grade for the martial arts exam, and he regrets that everything turned out this way. Before it's too late, she should find someone else to get a good grade for sure, otherwise he will be upset. The person Zhu Wen has displeased definitely has a huge influence, so she warns him to be extremely careful. Zhu Wen is walking along the corridor of the school in an unknown direction, immersed in his own thoughts. Verification is really important, and there is little time to prepare, where he can quickly find a person who will become a partner for him and whom he can trust. He thinks about this as he passes by another office, until Teacher Yu calls out to him from behind the slightly open door of the next one. He's talking about a certain Commander N. His real name is Tianzuo. He holds a very high position. Teacher Yu does not understand how Zhu Wen can be sure that he does not know anything about him, because then how could the commander criticize a simple high school student without having any connections with him? It all seems very strange. The teacher tells in more detail about the origin of Commander Tianzuo. He comes from a noble family and in his early 20s already holds a high post. Mr. Tian is one of the important military officials of the eastern zone of the country. He has great power in his hands. Zhu Wen does not fully understand the young master's position towards him. Teacher Yu is also not sure, but he does not doubt one thing for sure, one word from official Tian against Zhu Wen, and those who want to curry favor with him will do anything. Does he really not think that with his status, one wrong word he says can destroy the future of an ordinary schoolboy? Zhu Wen does not leave the thought that there may be some kind of connection between Tianzuo and Nanjing. The teacher does not claim, but does not deny such a possibility. However, it doesn't matter now. Zhu Wen urgently needs to find a team and register for verification. He reminds him that the deadline for submitting applications expires the day after tomorrow. In no case should he delay for a second, otherwise he may not be in time. The man hints that it is not necessary to recruit ordinary students to the team. He gives a personal recommendation to Zhu Wen to team up with Lai Zhu and so that no one can disturb him for sure. In return, they should get the highest score due to Zhu Wen's strength, and Lai Zhu and should be the best in their team. Thus, he would have to act solely in Zhu Wen's interests. In any case, to take even if not the first place among the team. But at least some is better than not being able to participate in the check at all. After a long conversation with the teacher, Zhu Wen leaves the school and calls his father. Perhaps the father knows who Tianzuo is, so he immediately asks him about him. For a moment, he is speechless when his father on the other side of the phone asks him how he found out that Tianzuo is his older brother. He clutches the phone to his ear, not believing what is happening. Tianzuo is the son of Miss Yang Lan, his father's new wife. If they get married, Tianzuo will become his older brother. The father is quiet for a while, and then loudly exclaims that in addition to his brother, he will have a younger sister in Jing. According to his father, and Tianzuo and Xiao Jing treat him very well. I can't understand why then they are so categorical about Zhu Wen himself. Maybe, deep down, they are both negatively opposed to his father's marriage with Yang Lan. And Jing had only one combat move to defeat him without much effort, and because of her brother Tianzuo, he almost lost the opportunity to take the entrance exam. He realizes that he is still too weak. If he was an epic class strongman, would they be able to do anything to him? He goes home with these thoughts. Very soon Zhu Wen finds himself inside an unremarkable-looking gray high-rise building. Among the tall and new houses in the area where he lives, his house is quite plain. In the last few days, the guy spent almost all his free time playing on that mysterious phone, as a result of which his apartment lost its original appearance. There are bags of garbage in the corner, which the guy forgot to throw out every time, and cardboard boxes are lying around somewhere nearby. Coupled with the dark interior of the apartment, all this looks much worse. Spending all his free days in the game, Zhu Wen did not manage to get anything but a crystal with the skill of spiritual power, which fell out after his victory on the day when Fan Ruoxi came to him on the sports field. Just when he thinks about it, something finally falls to him. It turns out to be a small yellow egg that stores a pet. It is very ambiguous that he got something like this, because most often mortal class players rarely have a companion pet. It is mainly present in those who have managed to reach the legendary class. He presses the egg with a concentrated expression on his face, and something huge, hidden behind a bright white flash, appears before him. At the moment, Zhu Wen loses consciousness, but after waking up, he discovers a red symbol with sharp ends on his hand. He massages his head to relieve the unbearable pain, while simultaneously exploring the bed with his hand in search of a phone. Probably, the companion pet has already hatched. Now he has his own mighty mutant ant. He has a large maroon-colored physique and also belongs to the mortal class. His strength, body, and spirit are equal to 9 units, which is considered a good indicator, and his speed is equal to 5 units. His innate Titan Fist skill is listed at the 9th level, which is also a high characteristic. Zhu Wen decides to summon him, which is why he is now tightly closing the dark blue curtains on all the windows in the room. He puts his hands on his sides, wondering how to do it. The young man is in turmoil, but decides that it is worth thinking about a pet. He barely closes his eyes for a moment, but he feels a tingling sensation in the place where the drawing is located. A massive glove appears on his hand. It looks like a mighty ant that has become his companion pet. So this is his form. They say that having a pet helps to improve the characteristics of the user himself. Most likely, his pet will improve his strength. Ju-Wen's house is not that big and is not suitable to test the strength of his pet. He decides to just take a closer look at the glove on his hand. But suddenly it starts to glow and completely disintegrates into small parts. The drawing, which has been hiding under her dense fabric all this time, also becomes brighter due to this, and the next moment red lightning flutters from it in different directions. The giant mutant ant emits an eerie hiss, it clicks its paws, and its large eyes and mouth glow with an azure blue light. Ju-Wen is horrified by his creepiness and terrible appearance, because in the game, being smaller in size and due to the game drawing, he looked much nicer. But now, thanks to its dimensions, it can easily ride it. The next day, late in the evening, when the sky was lit only by dim little stars, Teacher Yu takes Ju-Wen to a meeting with Lai Zhu. From the story of Teacher Yu, it becomes known that Lai Zhu is a lover of flaunting everything. But despite this fact, he is still a good person. In any case, they are united only by the upcoming exam, so the teacher assures that you should not take it personally. In the absolute silence that filled the space around them after their short conversation, they soon arrive at the building referred to as the Imperial Health Club. The large building is expensively equipped inside. It is quite simple, the ceilings are quite high, and glass crystals sparkle on every chandelier that they meet on the way to the second young Mr. Lai. One of the employees, who met them at the entrance and dressed in a classic black suit, kindly shows them the way to the young gentleman until they overcome a long corridor and find themselves opposite the right room. Inside the spacious room, absolute darkness reigns, and only from somewhere a pleasant melody coming to the ears and the subdued light of the same large chandeliers make the atmosphere here more pleasant. In a room with a luxurious interior, they notice a young gentleman in the company of several girls. Two of them sit on either side of him and laugh loudly from time to time. The young gentleman turns his attention to the teacher who has come and someone quiet behind his back. He invites him to sit down and have a drink, but Teacher Yu refuses, citing the presence of evening classes. He hurries to introduce Zhu and to Ju-Wen, with whom they will be partners in the exam. The young man in all white confidently declares that he has no doubts about Teacher Yu, so he will allow Ju-Wen to join him. The teacher needs to go back to school, so he leaves them to discuss all the issues related to checking combat skills. He promises to help Ju-Wen register for the exam later, but in the meantime tells him to get to know Lai Zhu and better so that they can understand each other well during the test. As soon as Teacher Yu leaves the room, leaving them alone, Zhu finally pays attention to him. He has heard of him as the #1 genius of the guide school. Ju-Wen awkwardly rubs his neck and replies that you should not believe the usual rumors about him. The young gentleman agrees with his words, because Guide is quite a small city, where can a genius come from here? If that were the case, and Jing wouldn't have defeated him with just one punch. Zhu talks about this, thoughtfully peering into his glass. Next, he says that they won't need any coordination training. Ju-Wen just needs to obey and not get in the way. When the time comes, then everything will go more than fine. The young gentleman is still interested in something from him, but Ju-Wen's entire attention is focused on the phone in his hands. Zhu whispers something in the ear of one of the girls nearby, and she jokingly grumbles at him, but gets up from her seat and goes to Ju-Wen. She sits down on the sofa next to him, snuggling too close for strangers, and is interested in his game. The young man does not pay attention to her at all and ignores the questions coming one after another. The girl is insulted by such a disregard in her direction and she, squeezing his chin in her hand, abruptly turns his head to her. Ju-Wen almost loses the fight in the game when he pushes her away from him. It seems that he overdid it with force, because the girl fell to the floor. From the laughter, Zhu and the other girls can't help but laugh even more. Ju-Wen still loses the game. The young gentleman grins to himself, finding this behavior of the guy funny. Ju-Wen spends the rest of the day at Mr. Zhu's house. During all this time, he has never been distracted from the game again. Time passes unnoticed and the evening outside the window is replaced by a deep night. Mr. Lai has been sleeping in the next room for a long time, but the sounds from Ju-Wen's game disturb his sleep. Opening his eyes, he does not understand what is the matter, and as soon as he hears muffled sounds from the room where they were in the afternoon, he gently rises from the bed. Ju-Wen played the game all night, but was unable to achieve anything during that time. The flying ants he's fighting are strong enough, but they haven't reached the legendary class yet. It is quite possible to defeat them, but first Ju-Wen needs to get at least the opportunity to strike. The fist of a titan at the 9th level of strength is capable of dealing powerful damage to a flying ant with silver wings. However, it takes longer than all other techniques. The guy doubts his ability to combine a crushing fist with an inch punch, which he is good at, with the fist of a titan. Since he is a character in this game, according to his theory, by improving the crushing fist with an inch punch in real life, the game character will also be able to synchronize with this improvement. Zhu Wen gets up from the sofa, moving to the side, and stands in a stand. He abruptly moves his hands alternately, practicing the blow, while Zhu Wen watches him from the side through the window of the door. He wonders why Zhu Wen trains at such a late time, notices that he uses an inch punch, the applied force and amplitude of which are too large. He's too sleepy right now to concentrate on that. His prolonged yawn testifies to this, and he, lazily stretching, decides to return to the bedroom. Zhu Wen needs to be at school early in the morning, as the entrance exams start today. There is silence throughout the school, because the classrooms are crowded with students who are now writing the first part of the exam. Lai Zhuan was in the audience with him. He is just like the others here, focused on the test. After a long time, when all the anxiety remains in the classrooms, and the forms of each of the students are handed over, they all leave the school with long-awaited relief. Some of them are met at the entrance by their parents, who shared their experiences here and hug them tightly. After a few days of rest, the second stage of the entrance tests begins. The bus provided by the school takes students to the old town of Guide. Zhu Wen attentively examines the first visible surroundings through the window. A few years ago, after an out-of-space storm that broke out strongly then, a rift appeared here, as a result of which everything around turned into an interdimensional zone. Local animals and plants have also undergone various changes due to the impact of other dimensions. Troops are stationed on the territory of this ancient city, so now it is forbidden to enter without a pass. Zhu Wen is thinking about the martial skills test, which will be the next stage of their entrance exams, which is about to begin. One by one, the students get off the bus to the building where the second stage of the exams will take place. It looks like an extension of a traditional Chinese palace, and several dozen military around it, like guards, keep order around. There is no way to see their faces. They are hidden behind dark glasses and balaclavas, and they themselves are wearing heavy body armor. While Lai Ziyuan and the others have not yet arrived, Zhu Wen is considering the territory of their temporary camp for the period of entrance exams. Looking around, his blue eyes cling to the roof of the building. Just as he begins to peer at something like a handprint in a concrete wall, without having time to think about what it might be, the phone in his pants pocket starts vibrating. He thinks that his father is calling him, but it turns out not to be so. There is no ringer function in this phone, and it has never vibrated before until today. Then what was the reason now? The guy is amazed at his own inattention, because he had not previously noticed the camera application in it. Surely this camera is in it for a reason, so you don't need to use it as a camera in standard phones. He points the camera at everything around him and tries to press the shutter, but it does not work. Most likely, the camera functionality does not work. He tries to point the camera at the same incomprehensible print on the wall. In the phone screen, it glows green, and then beeps and the download is activated on the screen. He looks at the desktop and sees the icon of a new application that has appeared, which is called the Ancient City of Guide. Now he has free time to explore this, so he goes to the most deserted place in the camp and activates the phone. He really manages to log into a new application. The building from the camp has completely moved into the game, and now he can explore it from the inside. Inside, the building looks like the inside of an ancient city. He moves as a character only a little, but a creature from another dimension comes out of the darkness to meet him. The skeleton soldier turns out to be larger than his character, and in the next second runs at him with an attack. Zhu Wen is at this location for the first time in the game, so the speed and strength of his character are not very great. But still, fighting with a skeleton soldier is much more interesting than with giant ants. He skillfully repels all the sudden attacks of the skeleton, dealing him only one retaliatory blow. That's enough for him to fall to the ground. What is more surprising for Zhu Wen is the crystal with the skill that fell immediately from the first fighter. He will certainly activate a new blue crystal and does not feel that much pain when he received the crushing fist skill. The sign that appeared on the display at that moment says that he has now studied the touch of the skeleton. Only 1 unit of spiritual power is spent on it. Zhu Wen remembers that this skill is a skill of the spiritual power of skeleton soldiers. He belongs to a low-level skill, but since a fairly small amount of energy is spent on him, he decides to explore this territory to test his strength at the same time. He calls his companion pet to make it more convenient. He pushes all the new skeleton soldiers out of his way. The guy is depressed by the fact that despite how much he has already passed the way, he still has not received anything except the crystal at the very beginning. Zhu Wen walks another short distance before an army of skeleton soldiers suddenly appears out of nowhere in his path. There are too many of them for him to resist them. Therefore, the next moment the game ends and crashes as soon as an army of unearthly creatures attacks him. He thinks that the opponent is strong enough, and in the exam he will need to avoid a collision with Jing. A strange sense of someone else's presence does not leave him, so he turns around and sees her stern, sharp gaze directed directly at him. He does not understand the reason for her visit here, but the girl abruptly reaches out to his face with a clenched fist with something. The guy catches himself thinking that she did not come to him again with good intentions, but Jing says that Uncle Feng, who is also Zhu Wen's father, asked to tell him this. The young man examines a small flash drive in his hand, and Jing openly says that his father should not have done this. She believes that it is pointless to waste your energy on people who themselves go against the path of improvement. Jing is almost leaving when he stops and looks at the guy over his shoulder. Her gaze expresses an open dislike for the young man, and she warns him not to dare to tell anyone what has to do with the On family. The girl adds with special malice that there is no place in their family for such incompetent weaklings like him. But it seems that she is confusing something, because Zhu Wen does not remember the moment when he managed to become part of their family. She's in too much of a hurry and jumping to conclusions. As soon as Jing disappears from his sight, he hears a ringing voice calling him from the side. As soon as he turns around, young Mr. Zhu puts his hand on his shoulder and nonchalantly informs him that he should not worry about the exam, because old man Yu stood up for him. So he can just follow Zhu Wen everywhere, and the other two members of their team will get points. The young gentleman impressively gestures with his hand, accompanying his messages, and adjusts his sunglasses. One of their partners, the one with the long blonde hair, assures him not to worry. There is no one outstanding in guide, so even if he is alone, he will be able to take the first place without much difficulty. The guy next to him, more serious looking, confirms his words. They will do their best, so there will be no mistakes. This is good, because Zhu Wen won't have to waste his strength. But it seems Lai Zhu and isn't even going to formally introduce them to him. They are probably just tools for him. He thinks about it until the loud voice of one of the organizers announces the imminent start of the exam. They are asked to approach the inspector-examiner of their group. The dark-haired girl takes Josie by the hand and says that she needs to get ready as soon as possible. Rushing to get ready, she manages to spot Zhu Wen in the crowd. The young man smiles at her, and in his smile she sees all the words of support that he could say to her if they had free time. Josie smiles back at him, mentally wishing him luck. One of the examiners appears from the Azure Storm. He explains to the students the whole essence of the exam. They have to collect crystals that will fall to them if they defeat the skeleton soldiers. The final score will directly depend on their number. The man finally raises his clenched fist up and encouragingly wishes everyone good luck. When students enter the old city of Guide, they are enveloped in a black fog with occasional flashes of blue lightning. But even through all this darkness, in the distance from them, you can see a bright portal from where someone is coming out. When Zhu Wen realizes who it is, fear completely overcomes him for a moment. One by one, the skeleton soldiers come out of the otherworldly dimension. They make frightening sounds, heading straight towards the students. All of them take combat positions, ready at any moment to prevent an attack, while that short, smiling, sandy-haired guy, along with the second one, go towards the skeleton soldiers. They skillfully scatter them to the sides, clearing the way. Zhu Wen makes sure for the last time that he has nothing to worry about, since these two are really able to get points for their entire team, so he hurries to check his guess. He activates the phone, intently waiting for the game to load while Lai Zhu Wen looks at him. He is amazed that even at such a moment the guy does not part with his phone. He begins to think that there is nothing special about this guy. Zhu Wen does not notice the gaze on himself, because he is completely immersed in the game. Not only the gates of the old city, but also the location of all the buildings here are completely similar to the dungeon in the game. Is it possible that all the dungeons from the game have their own prototype in real life? Zhu Wen remembers the skeleton rider from the game, which is also in the dungeon where they are now, and his gaze anxiously freezes at one point. He looks at the phone screen, which looks like a map showing the area they have already explored, and judging by it, they are still far from the skeleton rider. If they don't leave the area reserved for exams, they will avoid a collision with him. As soon as he thinks about it, that smiling guy insists on moving deeper into the old city. As he reports, there are almost no skeletons left in this area, and the randomness of their attack has become much slower. If they expect to get the highest score, they need to go further. Zhu Wen doubts this idea. He is in a hurry to inform Lai Zhu and that it can be very risky to go outside the territory, so he persuades them to refrain from doing so. Zhu ponders over his words, thoughtfully rubbing his chin, and barely has time to agree, as the smiling guy sneers mockingly and calls on Zhu Wen to tell directly if he was scared. He is capricious because of the possible omission of the first place. He tells Zhu that there are absolutely no skeletal soldiers left here, so they need to leave here if they want to get the highest grade. Another guy reminds them that they have a complete plan of this territory, and with this a map of the division into separate sections. If they enter the buffer zone, nothing should happen. Zhu grunts and agrees. He encourages Zhu Wen, saying that there is nothing to be afraid of. In case of danger, these two will certainly figure it out. This is not good, because he cannot now directly tell them that a strong monster is waiting for them next, ready to do anything with them at any moment. He should try to beat him again with the phone, although it is unlikely that anything will come of it. In any case, if something suddenly goes wrong, he will just grab Lai Zhu and run away. The smiling guy and the tall serious one clear the way for Lai Zhu and Zhu Wen coming from behind. The second one still continues to play the game on the phone. Zhu Wen diligently taps his fingers on the screen, trying to defeat the skeleton rider, but everything turns out to be in vain. He loses again, although he deftly dodges and jumps away, but the skeleton rider still catches up with him. He was much stronger than the flying ant with silver wings. Zhu Wen noticed that the skeleton rider could not maintain high agility all the time. He only increased his speed for a short moment to deliver his stabbing blow. This is probably the skill of his spiritual power. Zhu Wen is horrified to realize that thanks to this technique, the skeleton rider will easily be able to defeat their entire team. He hears one of those two guys from their team exclaiming with delight because of a dropped spatial crystal from another skeleton soldier he defeated. The blonde guy grabs the red crystal and runs to Lai Zhu to give it to him. Zhu Wen informs him that they have already scored enough points, so they can go back. Excitement slips into his voice, and he runs his hand over his neck. That blonde-haired smiling guy hears his words and turns around, starting to resent his haste. He doesn't even have to do anything, then why is he in such a hurry to get back? The tall guy agrees with him and is sure that they need to fight at least a few more soldiers to be safe. Lai Zhu takes off his sunglasses, squinting from the blinding sun, moves them on his head and looks at something in the phone. He tells the team members that there are no evil spatial creatures of legendary level registered anywhere nearby, so he thinks they can go even further. Zhu Wen squeezes his wrist tightly, stopping him, because he knows that it can really be dangerous, since he never managed to defeat the skeleton rider in the game, and asks about his belief in the sixth sense. Zhu Wen asks again without much interest only because earlier Zhu Wen said that it could be dangerous to go further. Why does he keep insisting on it? Zhu Wen shares information about himself and says that since childhood, every time he was in danger, a painful feeling appeared inside him, and it has never failed him before, but now this feeling is very strong. He puts his palm on his chest and seriously asserts this. The blonde-haired man's indignation is once again heard from the side, and in an instant he finds himself opposite Zhu Wen, poking him in the chest with his finger, almost in his face, lamenting that the young gentleman took him here so that he could regain his reputation, and that he would have to take full responsibility if for him, their team will go to the bottom. He sarcastically mumbles something about how it's just genius to involve some kind of sixth sense here, but Zhu Wen interrupts his tirade. His voice rises only by a tone, but even this is enough for the others to listen to him. He tries to explain to them that the guide area is quite small, so it is not unusual for one of the other students to venture beyond it. Along with this, they have brought so many points to their team that at the moment they can retain the advantage without any problems. That is why they can now fight within the area reserved for exams. There is no need for them to take risks and rush into unknown territory. Zhu Wen's face shows understanding. He agrees with the idea that Zhu Wen's words really make sense, but he does not have time to say anything more, feeling a cut from the back. Jiang Hao is the tall and quiet guy of their team, injuring not only Mr. Lai, but also that short blonde guy. Zhu Wen looks over his shoulder with hatred, guessing everything. He directly asks Jiang Hao about who sent him to him. It's some kind of natural invulnerability. Jiang Hao also did not expect that the younger Zhu Wen, who loves pleasure so much with his whole existence, secretly practices just such a spiritual power skill. The cultivation method represents the basic principles of improvement, which were developed by the people themselves. This is what distinguishes it from the life force skills and spatial crystals obtained from spatial beings. Actually, that is why different cultivation methods are determined by different limits of perfection. Natural invulnerability is one of the rare techniques, thanks to which it is possible to immediately reach the epic class, skipping the mortal and legendary. Zhu Wen recalls that only non-defiled guys can follow this path, but Lai Zhu does not look at all like a person who is able to make great efforts to improve such a skill. The blonde youth screams shrilly that Jiang Hao is a traitor. The guy can't believe he's helping Lai Mobai overthrow Mr. Lai Zhu, and Jiang Hao claims with complete indifference that he made his choice a long time ago. Lai Mobai still can't understand that Zhu Wen is not eager to fight him for power, but his brother still can't calm down. Zhu Wen barely manages to say this because of the injury, but Jiang Hao raises his hand for a new attack. He says that the young gentleman should not have pretended that he did not understand anything, and now he himself is aware of what is happening. Although Jiang Hao raised his hand for a new swing, but he does not direct it towards Lai Zhu Wen. A green splash sweeps past the young gentleman, and Zhu Wen and the blonde guy look dumbfounded at the big green snake. A blonde-haired young man with the last of his strength, as far as his injury allows him, shouts that this simply cannot be. How Jiang Hao, being a mere mortal, managed to get a legendary level pet. To do this, it is only necessary that someone who has already reached the legendary class voluntarily hand over their pet, despite the fact that it brings excruciating pain. Jiang Hao speaks venomously, admitting that Zhu Wen is really very smart, as his brother said, but this does not mean that he can be spared. This time he swings in order to launch an attack on Lai Zhu Wen, but the agitated confusion dissipates on his face when the young master fixes his sword in his hand. He strongly pushes it away for a long distance with the help of the power of his companion pet. Jiang Hao could not have imagined that the young master could also have a legendary level companion pet. It seems young Mr. Zhu has his own secrets. Zhu Wen emphasizes that he would never use such a terrible method to get what he wants. The young master's companion pet is a knight in dark armor, under which a red glow is visible. He is tall and looks quite formidable when Zhu Wen approaches Jiang Hao with him. He looks up at him for a brief moment before abruptly jumping up from the ground and running away. However, the young master will not leave it so easily. He won't let him escape, so he runs after him. Zhu Wen exclaims after them that Zhu Wen should not do this, because it is unknown where they may wander. He makes an attempt to catch up with them, but does not have time. The injured blonde guy behind him approaches and tells him to follow them immediately, but Zhu Wen tells him to go first. The young man finally shouts angrily that Zhu Wen is of no use. He considers Lai Zhu Wen's concern for him a waste of time. He doesn't understand that even if Zhu Wen goes after them now, he won't be able to help in any way. Unlike him, Lai Zhu Wen and Jiang Hao have top-level companion pets. However, they will all definitely be in trouble if they stumble upon that monster. Zhu Wen will only be able to help Zhu Wen if he can find a way to defeat the skeleton general. He quickly takes his phone out of his pocket and activates the game. The skeleton general immediately appears in front of him with a couple of ordinary skeleton soldiers on both sides. Zhu Wen directs his character straight at him to try to attack, but judging by all the past failed battles, this general is very strong. Something is going wrong because he has become too invulnerable. His character loses coordination and the monster catches up with him because Zhu and Jiang Hao have already encountered him in reality. There really is no choice, he will have to go after them. During the battle now, he noticed that there was a blind spot next to the skeleton general's horse where it was possible to launch an attack. Maybe Zhu Wen will have a tiny chance of winning if he takes this opportunity. Zhu Wen walks among the ruins of the old city of Guide. These are probably traces of their battle, which means they are very close. Through the clouds of fog, he manages to make out Zhu Wen and the blonde guy in the distance. The second one also notices him and asks why he didn't come for so long. Zhu Wen ignores the questions and asks if they are okay. Only now does he notice the skeleton rider. It is radically different from its game prototype. In the game, its outlines are smoothed out, when in real life they are sharper in appearance. Strangely enough, he doesn't attack Jiang Hao behind him. Is it really because of the properties of the armor on it? This armor looks like another companion pet from the legendary level, but how did Jiang Hao have so much money to purchase it? Still, being rich is pretty good. It seems that Mr. Zhu Wen's brother really wants him to fall among the ruins of the old city of Guide. The skeleton rider calls to get rid of violators who dared to cross the border of the territory of the ancient city, and, without waiting, begins to attack first. Lai Zhu Wen warns everyone to step back immediately when he reflects the rider's reception with his large shield. Zhu Wen manages to take cover in time, and he looks with horror in his eyes as the blonde guy from their team was swept away by the wave. He groans, but finds the strength to assure that he is alright, and tells Zhu Wen not to delay and help young Mr. Zhu. At this time, Jiang Hao releases his companion pet, and a huge dark snake flies towards Mr. Zhu. Jiang Hao taunts him, thinking that Zhu Wen won't last alone against him and the skeleton rider. A new roll of green flash after another attack from the enraged Jiang Hao forces Lai Zhu and's armor to crack in some places. Zhu Wen thinks that if the young master just keeps taking all the attacks, he really won't last long. He decides to help detain the monster for as long as it will be necessary for Lai Zhu and to deal with Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao is on the verge of laughing with such boldness of a mere mortal. He can't believe that a simple man wants to face off with the skeleton general, because this is a direct path to self-destruction. Zhu Wen confidently looks while taking off his vest, and nods affirmatively to Zhu Wen aside about being ready to attack. Zhu Wen carefully approaches the skeleton rider from behind in order to draw his attention to himself the next moment. He beckons him with his finger to himself with the utmost confidence. Up close, this monster looks even larger than from the outside, so Zhu Wen looks as tiny and helpless as possible against his background. However, this is not the case. Now Zhu Wen can feel the passage of the game for himself. When the rider starts to attack, he easily dodges it. It turns out that it's even much easier than in the game, and almost no different from it. The rider's big horse would have barely crushed him with its hoof right now if he hadn't recovered from his thoughts in time and sharply dodged to the side. Despite the similarity of the game and their battles now in real life, in the game the attacks of the skeleton rider are formulaic and predictable, while the real general is more agile and thoughtful. Zhu Wen manages to circle the rider and get under him to attack his horse, since in her absence he will become more vulnerable. But not a scratch remains on her. He begins to doubt whether the skeleton general has weaknesses. The blonde member of their team does not easily get to his feet and is sincerely amazed at Zhu Wen's strength. He managed to detain the rider, albeit briefly, but without the help of a companion pet. This is amazing and seems truly impossible. Even Jiang Hao gets distracted and looks towards the rider and Zhu Wen, and Lai Zhu and takes the opportunity to fully attack him. Despite his attempts, this does not affect Jiang Hao in any way. He only rises to his feet again without any problems and provokes Zhu into new attacks. The young master definitely can't stand to fight against the two of them, so he can't give up now and let them win. He has to smash this strange armor on Jiang Hao. Jiang Hao calls on his companion pet again to gain time, and Lai Zhu is distracted by a giant scaly snake, grinning at Jiang Hao's attempt to seize the leading position in this fight. Even if he had confused Zhu for a while, it was enough for him to get rid of Zhu Wen. The rider and Jiang Hao simultaneously head in his direction to complete their plan, but Zhu Wen manages to deftly dodge their joint attack. He had long seen Jiang Hao's weak spot, but only now had he managed to get closer to him, so he pulls his arm back to smash the armor on his shoulder the next moment. Before he is carried away, Jiang Hao looks in amazement at the glove on his right hand, which symbolizes his companion pet, and cannot believe that a mere mortal can have a pet. As soon as the armor on Jiang Hao's shoulder is destroyed, his mighty snake turns into a small gecko, and now he is placed on one of the destroyed tiles around. Lai Zhu steps on him and he squeaks loudly. Now the skeleton rider is even more angry. He starts attacking them with extremely high speed, and Lai Zhu covers Zhu Wen with himself, being protected by his armor. He quickly tells him that he will start distracting the skeleton general so that Zhu Wen has the opportunity to strike a decisive blow. They run at him while the rider is waiting for them on the spot, and Zhu rushes from side to side, performing distracting maneuvers. Zhu Wen, taking advantage of this, gets as close as possible to the rider and delivers the last strongest attack. Clouds of smoke emanate from him, but the next moment the general is seen from the thick fog. There's not a scratch on it. They attacked it so many times, but not a crack appeared on it. Zhu Wen freezes, realizing that there is an important detail on the rider, which they did not pay attention to from the very beginning. Judging by Zhu's affirmative nod, he also understood this. Perhaps the crack in the skull of the skeleton general looks ordinary, but something tells Zhu Wen that it may now be the beginning of the end of this fight. Young Master Lai's armor is starting to disappear from him, but they still have time to finish. He and Zhu Wen surround the rider to launch a joint attack. Zhu Wen still manages to hit right on the crack, so he cracks into small pieces with a crash. As the rider disappears, the dust settles on the concrete of the ancient city, and only a large, amber-colored crystal remains lying on a pile of gray dust. Zhu Wen examines the stone with the red flame pattern with extreme delight and attentiveness until Lai Ziyuan approaches him. He is right when he calls this glowing stone an egg with a companion pet. It is a great luck to get such an object. When Ziyuan, impressively throwing his hands behind his head, while the armor of his companion pet on him finally dissipates, leaves, Zhu Wen asks him if he needs a companion pet of the skeleton rider. He allows Zhu Wen to keep it as a thank you. If it wasn't for Zhu Wen, then young Master Lai and Mayan too, that guy with the blonde hair, would have fallen here long ago. Mr. Zhu talks about this while pulling on his jacket. His pet's armor completely left him without clothes. Zhu Wen says words of gratitude and replies that he will gladly take a companion pet left over from the skeleton rider. Zhu Wen finally warns him that as long as Zhu Wen is a mere mortal, he will not be able to hatch a legendary level egg. He definitely shouldn't take it irresponsibly. The young gentleman draws attention to his burgundy glove, from which fiery waves still emanate, and wonders where Zhu Wen can have a companion pet. He himself somehow, thanks to his natural vulnerability, can control his knight in black armor. Then how did Zhu Wen manage to get his pet? Zhu Wen hastens to assure him that this pet belongs to the mortal class, and Zhu Wen looks at him for a long time until one thought visits him. Most often, creatures of the legendary level are much stronger than creatures belonging to a mortal. The weaker the unearthly creature turns out to be, the more difficult it is for him to form his egg. All this means that eggs with companions from the mortal level are much less common than the legendary one. Zhu Wen approaches his face, with envy and discontent concluding about his lucky luck. Zhu Wen looks away and bumps into Jiang Hao's body. He is interested in what they will do now, but Zhu Wen picks at his ear and casually throws that he asked for it. He says he will take care of everything that happened here. Zhu Wen thinks about it, but jerks away from his hand on her shoulder. The blue-haired man pats him encouragingly on the shoulder, convinces them that they have nothing to worry about right now. When they get out of here, Zhu Wen can apply to any university without hesitation, according to Zhu Wen. He will personally make sure that he is accepted. They pick up Mayan too, carrying him on their shoulders, and finally leave the territory of the old city of Guide. It seems that they came out the very last, because there is no one next to one of the organizers. This is also evidenced by the sun almost setting below the horizon. Its golden light pleasantly settles on the face and warms a little after the coolness of the walls of the ancient city. Zhu Wen finally waves to Zhu Wen until he gets into his personal jeep. Zhu Wen, with the last of his strength left after today's exhausting exam, is holding on to the handle on the bus. Upon arrival, he shivers, getting off the bus into the cool evening air. Apparently, he developed anemia due to the loss of a large amount of energy. He thinks about whether goji berries and brown sugar will help him now. He heads home along an empty street lit by a couple of dim lanterns, and stumbles over someone's body. Zhu Wen is very scared, but the man is still breathing. He lifts him up on a bench at the bus stop and asks if he's okay. An unknown man with long gray hair waves away with his palm, because nothing serious has happened. The old disease just reminded me of itself again. Zhu Wen exhales with relief, and since everything is fine with the old man, he is about to leave, but he calls him. He believes that their meeting is a kind of will of fate, so they can talk a little. Zhu Wen turns around and hurries to say that he is not very good at conversations, but the man insists on at least a short conversation. He wants to ask him a few questions and coughs. Something inside Zhu Wen tells him to listen to the man. He looks up at him with his red eyes, and it takes a while before he asks the first question. Zhu Wen's face stretches from the absurdity. He expected to hear a reasonable question, but the man just asks what size he likes breasts. Although this is an unusual question that can be heard in everyday life from a friend, he still, after a short thought, modestly answers that it is small. The man laughs loudly and repeats several times that he too. He says that only immature youngsters like women with a large size, while Zhu Wen thinks about the practicality of small breasts. It is much more convenient to maintain balance in battle with her than with a large one. Next, the man, who now seems extremely strange to the guy, after a short silence asks the following question. He asks about his preferences in the character of girls. The old man wonders if he likes gentle and affectionate girls or bold and sarcastic. At one point, Zhu Wen feels like the man is openly mocking him. But as for his question, he thinks about the answer to it much longer than for the first one. In his opinion, no sane guy will refuse a nice girl, deciding to give preference to ignorance. However, if he continues to say what this old man wants to hear now, then this pointless chatter won't end soon. how he now dreams of getting home as soon as possible, having a good wash, changing clothes for soft, comfortable pajamas, eating a hearty and tasty meal, not forgetting to play a game before a long, sound sleep. Finally, he replies that he prefers brash, sarcastic girls. The man is silent for a few seconds, lowering his head, and the guy thinks that the moment has finally come when he can go home. But, unfortunately, Ju Wen looks at him with burning eyes and exclaims that he also likes such. He enthusiastically says something about the fact that there is nothing funny about cute and gentle girls. Women with a perky character are much more interested than they are. The man admits that he did not expect such a good taste for women from such a young guy. Ju Wen rubs his hand over his face painfully, listening to all this. Involuntarily, he remembers Jing. She was by no means nice and friendly with him in their first and last meeting. Who in their right mind would voluntarily choose a girl like her at all? The man talks about his preferences again, calls him an outstanding person, until the young man offers to take him home. It seems that he does not listen to him at all, because he does not stop talking about his own for a second. He examines the guy from head to toe, grunts and notes that the man's body is the main factor that is necessary for the conquest of girls. According to him, Ju Wen has so little vitality that even his good taste will not help in this case. To his surprise, the man seems to read his inner thoughts and says that he feels his nervous bitterness because of him, but turns to him for the last time. He holds out a small craft paper sheet and suggests perfecting the method of cultivating his spiritual power. He chuckles softly at his puzzled face. He says that he just needs to figure it out and guarantees that with this method he will be able to make any woman submissive. Ju Wen thanks him, but hastens to refuse the offer without hesitation. However, the man says that the method of meditation through suffering that he uses for self-improvement is nothing compared to this. The heavenly demon treatise does not belong to a first-class technique, but it is far superior to meditation through suffering. Ju Wen stiffens at his words. How does this man know what method of improvement he uses? He looks skeptically at the exposed areas of his body once again. Ju Wen has a small amount of vitality, but his body is strong in spirit. Such a result can be achieved by using meditation through suffering. However, if he continues to improve through this method, it will soon have a negative impact on him. The man strongly recommends taking it, because this method is 1,000 times better than his previous one. But Ju Wen doubts. They had just met, since he could accept such a valuable gift from a stranger. It's hard to say what's on this man's mind. If he is not a fraudster, then he is really going to give such a valuable thing to the first person he meets. If this man has nothing more to say to him, then he will leave. With long strides, he hurries to get out of this ill-fated stop, where no one but him turned out to be at such a moment, and finally get home. But the old man is not going to back down. He rests his elbows on his knees and, in a low voice that immediately sends goosebumps, orders him to stop. Ju Wen is not going to repeat his mistakes. More recently, succumbing to his inner sympathy, he agreed to a conversation with this man, which he soon regretted, so now he confidently continues to walk until his feet seem to stick to the asphalt. He can't move, and when they lift him into the air, he gets scared at all. Somehow, the man managed to move him from a short distance that he managed to walk back to the bus stop. The old man flashes his red eyes, which seem even brighter in the light of the moon, and with his words forces a chill to run along his spine. Everyone who had previously refused him, Jing Dao Zhang himself, did not leave him alive. Ju Wen says this name several times, trying to remember where he could have heard it, because it sounds quite familiar. Awareness comes to him as quickly as he briefly examines a man. His name was definitely written in the history books. When the period of the greatest chaos reigned on Earth due to the interdimensional storm, the most cold-blooded and bloodthirsty man in all history was born. He represents a demon who has overcome 27 epic-class heroes one by one without remorse. The man wonders if Ju Wen has changed his mind about his proposed method of improvement. He hears Ju Wen's immediate loud exclamation and his agreement. The man knows that despite the fact that he agrees, inside his heart screams that he does not want to learn a demonic skill. Ju Wen thinks that Tao Zion is full of nonsense. If he did master this skill, wouldn't the Commonwealth come to arrest him for having an affair with this demon king? The man gets up from the bench of the bus stop and buttons up his shirt, saying that he will not be able to train anyway if he gives him information about the method. He reaches into the inside pocket of his shirt and pulls out another paper parcel, only black. He offers him another method and asks if Ju Wen will practice it. The young man looks away. All the doubt of his thoughts is visible in it, but the man puts a black bundle in his palm and squeezes his wrist. He makes sure that this time the guy will sensibly assess all the options for the outcome of events after the refusal, and will not reject the kindness of the old man this time. The man peacefully closes his eyes and puts his hands behind his back before leaving the bus stop. Zhu Wen exhales so relieved, as if he has just cleansed his soul. It becomes incredibly easy that now there is an inexplicable emptiness inside. Zhu Wen only hopes that the old man will not watch him from afar. He stands for some time in the middle of an empty bright street until he sneezes. Definitely need to go home first so as not to get sick. He runs past a man and a girl, accompanied by 3 guards, and briefly examines the badge of the Commonwealth employees on their uniforms. They check the accuracy of their location with one of the employees and head in the opposite direction from Zhu Wen. There is a high probability that they are now looking for Jing Daozian. In any case, it does not concern him. He finally finds himself in the walls of his native apartment. It feels like he hasn't been in it for several months, because at first glance it looks unusual. The first point of his pacification plan has been successfully completed, even after some time, but now at least he is at home, and not at a cold and damp stop. Besides, who knows what might have happened if he had stayed longer with that old demon. Those Commonwealth employees were probably looking for him to detain. Anyway, now he has enjoyed a warm shower and finally the meaning of the event of today's oversaturated day. He dries his hair with a towel, peering at his reflection in the mirror, analyzing everything. First, Lai Ziuan's brother tried to remove him, then he met with the legendary villain, who is now wanted by the Commonwealth. He just wants to play games in peace. The guy looks at the companion pet egg that fell out of the skeleton general, and at the black bundle with the method. It's hard to say whether this method is a blessing or a curse. He falls on the bed in his room and closes his eyes for a second, but falls asleep. My mind is dark, and my heart is pounding furiously, as if it tries to jump out of my chest. The guy seems to fall off a cliff into the abyss of a dark ravine to a crowd of reaching hands. These hands are black, as if they were swallowed up by darkness, with sharp curved claws. When he falls towards them, they all reach out to him, as if he is an anchor to grab onto to get out of there. But it is at this moment that Zhu Wen jumps up on the bed. He breathes heavily and bursts into the bathroom due to a feeling of approaching nausea. The guy is completely perplexed by what is happening. The black bundle with the method that the old demon gave him catches his eye. Blue hieroglyphs began to glow on it, meaning the lost sutra of immortality. Zhu Wen turns something like a black notebook in front of him, again examining it very carefully, but does not dare to open it. As it seems to him, there is nothing special about this black thing that could cause his sudden ill health. He washes his face to get sleepiness out of his eyes, because after that nightmare he never managed to fall asleep. Clarity of consciousness has returned to him, and the discomfort has almost disappeared, so he decides to play the game on that mysterious phone. He activates the phone and then waits a short time for the game to start, and then is surprised when he sees the skeleton general. It seems that the monsters from the game and in reality are not related to each other in any way. He considers it a great opportunity to try to beat him again. Active attacks and clever deviations from his techniques do not lead to anything new. The nasty skeleton general defeats him again. Zhu Wen falls on the bed, throwing the phone aside. The skeleton rider is much weaker in the game than in reality, but without the help of a knight in black armor alone, he will be able to defeat him only if he accurately calculates every move. It's depressing, but Zhu Wen tries not to dwell on these thoughts. In any case, he still has time to try to defeat him, since there are still a few days left before the announcement of the exam results. He thinks about his well-being and searches the internet for ways to prevent its deterioration at home. Everything turns out to be too complicated, so he decides to limit himself to a syrup of plain water and brown sugar. If he wants to spend days waiting for the results in the game, then he needs to go and buy food right now. He puts on the first beige pants he comes across, a simple loose t-shirt with an uncomplicated black pattern and a light jacket over it. In a convenience store near the house, he fills a basket with the same type of instant noodles and hurries to the checkout. These days pass in the same mode as those when he just found this phone and studied the game. Garbage has accumulated in the apartment again, and the guy himself leaves the bed only to brew noodles. He develops different strategies after each new unsuccessful one, until one day he finally manages to defeat the skeleton general. He gets an orange spatial crystal, which gives high speed and is upgraded to the 13th level. Despite this, his character's speed is reduced from 11 units to 9. He reflects on the fact that most likely 9 units is the limit for mortal class players who use meditation through suffering. Most likely, it will simply not be possible to reach the legendary class with her. Everything is exactly as Jing Daozian said. Compared to the method of natural invulnerability, the method of meditation through suffering does not stand next to it. He has nowhere to look for a new high-class method to improve through it, and he cannot use the one that the old demon gave him. Understanding dawns on him, and he sits down at the computer desk and said that her father asked her to give him this flash drive. He inserts it into the computer unit, hoping that it has what he needs. The guy thinks that there might be something meaningful on the flash drive for self-improvement, but he starts laughing. How can his father, who is not interested in this topic, have something amazing? And when he sees a sign on the screen with shooting at the sun, he pinches himself hard on the cheek because he can't believe it, and the old fun is replaced by seriousness. Pandemic World Online is a fighting MMO game in which a huge number of large-scale battles take place. And in this game, Kisaragi Toya is the strongest berserker in history, who has seen many wars. He was a berserker, but now he's a magician in another world. Here he belongs to the Henrietta Kingdom, and they stand face to face with the Luneta Kingdom. And the Sifansi Kingdom sends mercenaries to both kingdoms as support for the war. Every night these three countries fight for control of the lands in an endless war. The maximum level in the game is 999th, but only 0.1% of the players reach the 500th. And Kisaragi Toya with the 700th level is one of them. He becomes even stronger, glorifying his name everywhere. He's a berserker who uses Buster's sword. After the victory in the duel, the guys gathered in a tavern on the central square. They happily congratulated each other on their victory. The guys gathered at the table to celebrate and drink beer, because today the enemy was formidable. But thanks to Toya, they were able to win. The guy in the mask waved his hands in embarrassment and said that they had won only thanks to everyone's efforts. The guys at the table laughingly asked what had become of his merciless berserker personality, because when they fought, Kisaragi Toya was very dangerous. But despite this, they are very happy to have someone with level 700 as an ally. If we consider the level of the guy, we can say that he spent many nights without sleep to achieve such results. He put a lot of effort into achieving this. In the middle of the conversation, an offer to go monster hunting slipped through. Someone agreed and suggested Lolarak Cave as a place. However, Kisaragi Toya said he would like to sort things out first. Today's reward appeared in front of him, the mage's robe, a rather useless thing for a berserker. The guy told the others to wait a bit because he decided to log in. He pressed the exit button and then joined back. Another character appeared. He was immediately asked about the fact that he had created a magician's account. Kisaragi Toya answered in the affirmative, and then, taking the awards, explained that he had accumulated a lot of things for the magician. After all, since he can't use them with his berserk account, he created this one to store items. The guy uses this account only as a storage of things that he doesn't need. In the opinion of other players, it was wasteful, but even so, the guy put a lot of effort into the design of this character. He was called to hunt again, but he said that it would be very difficult, since this account is the first level. He asked the others to wait until he logged into the berserker account. But before he could get out, a magic circle appeared under his feet. Everyone was watching in shock and trying to figure out what was going on. Kisaragi Toya suggested that this was some kind of bug. There was an explosion and a girl appeared in front of my eyes. The guy was sitting on the floor, and strangers were standing in front of him. In the center was an elderly man who looked like a church minister and a girl. They shouted what happened. Someone said that, as expected, they succeeded on the first attempt. Kisaragi Toya was sitting in a circle on the floor and did not understand what was going on. He realized that he could not see the monitor, so he immediately asked where he was. The girl grabbed him and began to hug him, calling him a hero, as well as the fact that they were waiting for him. She suddenly let him go and apologized, as she was excited and did it without thinking. The guy awkwardly looked away and said that everything was fine. The girl bowed politely and apologized for not introducing herself at first. She is the first princess of the Henrietta Kingdom, and her name is Sharon von Henrietta. She said she was very pleased to meet the guy. She turned to him with a request to lend them her power. Their kingdom is at war with the kingdom of Luneta, and countless lives and lands have been taken from them. The opponents even killed women and children, so then they decided to use the power of their national treasure, the Pearl of the Call, thereby calling the hero to their lands. Kisaragi Toya thought that they are not in the game in the novel, so it doesn't make sense. He replied to the princess that even if she was talking about it, he was an ordinary employee of 30 years. To this statement, Sharon replied that he seemed very young to her. The guy asked her about it and pointed to his platinum-colored hair. And then, realizing that he had platinum hair, he opened his raincoat and looked at his torso. He asked in shock what kind of hot body it was. The knight of the princess began to swear at him because the guy behaves indecently in front of the princess, but she stopped him and turned to the guy. Sharon explained that it was quite normal that he was at a loss right now. She asked the guy to check his status, as this would be proof that he is a hero. A virtual window with information about him appeared in front of Toya. His name is Kisaragi Toya. He is of the human race, male, he is 16 years old, a magician by profession, and his title is called the One Who is Called. He has the first level, there are no abilities, as well as magic, and a special ability is an assessment. He can use magic of all attributes and use spatial storage. The guy was surprised by such a window, because it's just like in the game, but there was no word hero anywhere. Sharon asked him about his title, to which he replied that the One Who is Called. They say that those who have been called have a high level, so his expectations should be higher than the 100th. But the guy replied that level 1. There was indignation in the crowd, since this is the level of a newborn. How could this happen? These people seemed pretty angry, so the guy replied in confusion that apparently they had called the wrong one, so they should bring him back. The knight next to the princess got angry again, because at a moment like this, he behaves like this. Sharon stopped him again. She replied that the summoning pearl has an analog, which is the reverse summoning pearl. That means they'll be able to send him back. But first she needs to perform the summoning ceremony again. It can only be performed once every few years on a full moon, and she can only create one spell with the magic power she currently has. Kisaragi Toya asked that he could then hold a callback ceremony tomorrow if the princess so desired. She thanked him for his understanding. In that case, she offered to use the summoning pearl again. The guy was rudely chased out of the circle. An old church minister gave the princess a potion to restore her magical power. She drank the potion and began to summon. This time the light was much brighter, when suddenly the summoning pearl broke. A young man in armor appeared in the circle, who asked with incomprehension about what had happened to him. He was fighting a monster, and then suddenly he was here. Sharon ran up to him and, grabbing his hands, asked him to tell her his title. The guy checked with bewilderment and called himself a sacred knight and hero. People around began to rejoice at what happened, because now their kingdom is saved. The princess rushed into the arms of the hero with the words that she had been waiting for him for so long. She was called because the king is waiting for a hero. Kisaragi Toya found himself in a room that clearly does not look like a guest room. The maid through the door said she had left his dinner on the table. The guy lifted the lid of the tray, and there was a piece of bread and an empty soup on it. Toya went to the mirror and examined himself. He assumed that this was a magician he had created. He fell on the bed with thoughts about why he was here. After some time, he ate the food that was left for him, but his stomach still continued to rumble from hunger. Because of this, he couldn't even sleep if only he had food. He suddenly thought of trying to open the vault. The guy stretched out his hand forward, but nothing happened, when suddenly his spatial storage still opened. There were a huge number of different items in it, because he threw everything he didn't use into the vault. While Kisaragi was looking through the items, that elderly man entered the room. He informed the guest from another world that it was time to start the callback ceremony. They were accompanied by knights, and the man explained that the princess was busy right now, so he would be the one to conduct the ceremony. He is a court magician, so there is nothing to worry about. The guy was looking around and noticed Sharon in the yard with the newly arrived hero. Finally, he will be able to return home. He has a lot of work to do tomorrow. They came to the hall, where the guy stood in a circle again. The man began to recite a spell, and the guy thought that he would be able to continue his daily life. He is sure that later he will perceive it as a simple dream. He began to gradually lose consciousness while the man was reciting the spell. Kisaragi Toya woke up somewhere in nature in the same guise. He thought it must be a joke. He sat on the grass and thought that it turns out he will not be able to return to his world. And what should he do now? The guy was somewhere in nature. He examined his appearance, sat down on a rock and thought about how he would continue to live. He went to work before he came to Henrietta Kingdom, and he didn't have any relatives left in that world, so he doesn't have anyone to worry about. His thoughts were interrupted by a rumbling stomach. Even at such moments he is still hungry. He remembered about the spatial storage and immediately opened it. There were 99 units of bread in it, so he immediately used one. A piece of bread appeared in the air, and the guy deftly caught it. He ate, still sitting on the rock. The number of bread in the vault decreased when he took it out. Kisaragi Toya stood up, as he was still thinking about how he should live now, so he decided to check the vault first. He had a lot of weapons and things that he once used in the game. Apart from them, there were also many more different items. He found a helmet and shield that cost a fortune, as well as his very first buster sword that he used. He swung it and hit the tree, but it didn't even move. The guy concentrated and an hour later he was already good at controlling it, which means that he can use it, even being a magician. Kisaragi decided that first he had to get to a village or a city. He had an idea that there might be something suitable in the vault. In the game, he used a horse until he reached the 100th level, and after getting a better vehicle, the guy moved it to the storage. The magician decided to try to get a horse. A bright flash appeared in front of him, and then a big horse appeared. She laughed loudly and began to lick the guy's head like he was some kind of yummy. He wiped his head and turned to the horse with the words that he would like to go to some populated place and asked for a ride. The horse sat down so that the guy could climb on it, and they set off. Kisaragi Toya thought that from this moment he begins his life in this world. The steed sped up so sharply that the guy could barely hold on. They reached the wagon, which was attacked by goblins. It all looks like a template battle, and Kisaragi did not know if he could help them, since he is only a first-level magician. He turned to the horse with a question about whether she could help him, as she suddenly began to shred goblins on her own, so the guy could only hold on tighter. And after some time, all the enemies were defeated. The people at the cart were quite wary, because it looked like they were scared of the horse, so Kisaragi got off her and apologized. The knight who was there thanked the guy for his help and was surprised at how skillfully the magician rides a war horse. The young man tried to explain that the horse did everything himself, but it seems that the animal became very attached to him, as it began to chew his head again. At the request of the Adventurers Guild, these guys accompanied the merchant's cart. It's all very similar to some story of rebirth that he read in a novella. The people accompanying the cart were very happy that they were rescued. They offered to go to the city together, to which Toya immediately reacted, as it would help him a lot. The knight said that there is a guild in the city where a guy can get a certificate of conquest. But the young man had no idea what it was, so the knight kindly said that this certificate, in fact, proves that you defeated the monster. Also, if he goes to the guild, he can get money. A goblin has this right ear, since a low-class monster doesn't have a magic stone. The guys began to cut off the right ears of the stricken goblins, so the guy also wanted to do it. But he was stopped because they wanted to repay him for saving him in this way. Kisaragi Toya thanked them for this with a smile. The guy told them that he had lost his memory, so he couldn't explain how he got there. They were sitting around the campfire and he was offered to register with the Adventurers Guild. Then he would receive the title of an adventurer. If he wants to live in this world, then he should think about it. The knight also said that if the guy becomes a member of the guild, he will be able to conclude a contract of submission. They use magical tools to make a contract between master and servant, but the one who concludes it must be recognized as a monster. It's rare to have a war horse on hand, and even many high-ranking adventurers don't own them. Kisaragi was replaced as a watchman, so he went to rest. Sitting with his horse, the guy asked her a question about whether she recognizes him as her master. They finally arrived at the place. This is the city of Fandi. It is quite lively and there are a lot of people walking around the kiosks, and there are even beastmen here. Now Toya felt that he was in another world. They said goodbye to the guys, and they offered to have a drink together when he finished his business. The guy gathered his thoughts and decided that from now on he would become an adventurer, so he went to the guild of the city. He entered the building, but his horse was following him. But she shouldn't have gone in there, so he pushed her out and told her to wait outside and not go anywhere. He finally entered the room and sighed in surprise, because there were a variety of people there and not only. Kisaragi Toya came up to the counter and said he wanted to register as an adventurer, and would also like to sign a submission contract with a horse. The girl politely replied to the newcomer that the horses did not need this contract, to which he clarified that she was fighting. The girl exclaimed loudly and said that it was a B-rank monster, so he needed to register her. She enthusiastically said that she would like to see a war horse, and handed him a form to fill out. Kisaragi took the paper in his hands and was surprised, as he was able to read these letters. Also, when he wrote ordinary letters, they changed to the letters of this world. It remains to register a guild card for him. For this, his finger was pierced so that he touched the ball with a drop of blood. Immediately after that, he was given his card, as well as an identity card, which he was asked not to lose. The girl explained that when he holds her close to his body, she automatically absorbs his magical power and calls up his registration information. He put it to his chest, and the information really appeared. He can also perform tasks one level above his level in the guild. In the case of Kisaragi, these are E-rank tasks, since he has F. Some items were brought to him. And the girl said that for the contract of submission, the owner must wear this bracelet, and he puts the necklace on the monster with his consent, then the contract can be considered concluded. This is a certificate of the servant's identity, which other people perceive as a contract. She asked if he had any more questions, to which the young man asked about a place where he could leave his horse. The girl said not to worry about it and started looking for a suitable place. The guy thanked her for her help, The girl suddenly remembered that she had forgotten to introduce herself. She apologized and gave her name, Milia. She asked with a smile about his war horse, when suddenly the door behind him abruptly opened. The guy, wrapped in a rope, was lying on the floor. Someone shouted that the huge horse was mad. Toya tried to calm her down, but she continued to run amok. The guild people told him to get rid of her. Kisaragi Toya shouted to the horse to calm down, otherwise he would not take her with him. The horse immediately calmed down. The man behind the counter of a small kiosk said it was the fault of those guys. He asked about the fact that his horse is quite rare, because when those guys tied a rope around him and tried to take him away, he freaked out. The horse just didn't want to be separated from its owner, that's all. The man said that this is the daily life of adventurers, and he does not feel sorry for them, because they are to blame. He treated the guy to a special meat of the city of Fandi to cheer him up. There were many cases when servants without a certificate were stolen in broad daylight. Kisaragi Toya and his war horse were sitting by the river and eating shish kebab, and the guy was thinking that don't horses eat grass. He asked his mount about the fact that he was alone in his vault all this time. The guy was sitting and talking about how the horse is his first friend in this world and it would be a problem if he disappeared. He held out his hand with the necklace and asked permission to put it on as proof that he was a servant. The horse looked at him and calmly lowered his head. Kisaragi said he had to call him something. The name Obsidian or Kokyu came to mind in their language, because he is just as black. He asked him to take care of himself, and the horse in response began to chew his head again. A girl who was eating something was watching everything that was happening. She noticed the war horse, as well as how she was attached to this guy. In her opinion, they seemed strange to her. Such girls are called Lola, but she is older than your grandmother. Kisaragi Toya decided to temporarily settle in a hotel called Foxtail Rest, which the guild advised him. This place is run by the parents and children of beastmen, and it is famous for its cooking, and especially for the stew of orcs. A hotel employee came to the guy's room with lunch, but she noticed that the young man was still sleeping, as she smiled and said that he must be very tired. Toya finally woke up. He slept so well after a long time. He went out into the yard, where Kokyu was standing in the pen. The horse, as usual, began to chew the guy's head, and he was surprised that even in such a situation, he was sleeping so soundly. The guy thought that, whatever it was, he needed to learn more about this world. Kisaragi Toya discovered that he could buy anything in this world for in-game currency, so he came to the hotel with a bag of money to settle for 10 days. However, they told him there that it was too much, so he came to the conclusion that he did not know the value of the money he had. He needs to study economics in the city. Toya got ready and informed the worker that he would leave for a while, and thanked her for her help in caring for the horse. She also told him to come back early, as there would be orc stew for dinner tonight. In an attempt to find out the value of money while walking around the market, Kisaragi Toya realized that he didn't seem to need to worry about money. He noticed a gun store where he immediately went. He picked up a sword and thought that in fantasy worlds there should always be a weapon. However, he needs a weapon of a higher rank than what he has. The blacksmith said that if the guy is a magician, then it would be better for him to visit the magic tools store. Kisaragi Toya enthusiastically asked if there were magic books there, since he did not use magic in the game. He decided to go and see. The seller said that a shop called Twilight Pavilion should be on one of these streets, and he also said that the seller here is a little strange. Kisaragi entered the store and saw a doll sitting on a chair, but she suddenly opened her eyes. It turns out that this is an elf, as well as the same Lola who watched the guy with the horse when they were at the river. She said she remembered him, smiled and stood up. To the bewilderment of the guy, she said that it was not important and asked what he was looking for. Kisaragi Toya thought that the owner is a little girl. As his thoughts were interrupted by the words of the elf, she warned that she was much older than a man like him. And even if she looks like that, she's still a full-fledged adult girl. The guy laughed awkwardly, because his expression immediately gave him away. He said he is looking for magic books since he is a novice adventurer, but he doesn't know how to use magic. The elf went to the bookshelf and began to take out a few, simultaneously explaining which one costs how much. The price of books for novice magicians is 10 silver coins, a book of a medium-level magician costs 50 silver coins, and 2 gold coins for a book for high-level ones. She explained that if he is a beginner, then it is worth starting with a beginner's book, since it contains various spells for everyday life. Walking around the city, Kisaragi Toya has already found out the value of his money. 1 copper coin is 100 yen, 1 silver coin is 10,000 yen, and 1 gold coin is worth 1 million yen. He wondered if it was worth buying them. After all, it seems to be expensive. But the guy decided to buy all 3. The elf said with a smile that he was unusually special, even though he was still so young. She asked what his name was, and after the guy introduced himself, she asked about the payment. Toya took out the coins, and the girl was surprised that he knew how to use the vault. Because of this, Kisaragi Toya asked her if he was careless when using it in public. She replied that there was no need to be so careful, even though it was a rare skill. But since he had used it, then she could do it now. The guy relaxed, because she also knows how to use it. The girl added with a confident look that even if it is the same storage skill, her skill is called the Twilight Sage Storage Natalia, in which you can store up to 5,000 kilograms. Kisaragi Toya thought about it. No matter how he thought about it, her storage wouldn't be able to match his. In short, his storage has long exceeded the limit of the number of items he can store there. He looked at the smug girl and decided it was better to keep it a secret. The elf asked if he needed anything else, to which the guy replied in the negative, since it was time for him to go home. The girl replied that if he needed something else, he could come at any time, because, in her opinion, he had good potential as a magician, so she would teach him step by step, of course, for a certain price. Toya smiled awkwardly and left. He returned to the hotel and began to study the book for beginners. Attacking, recovery and support magic was recorded and classified in it. He has to learn how to use recovery magic at a certain level. The guy noticed something strange. The spells are imprinted on their own in his mind. After a while, he thought that he already felt like he could use some high-level spells. The guy decided to try healing, and his magic power burst out. The next morning, the hotel staff discussed the fact that something was glowing at night. Not everyone noticed it, but for some reason their bodies were in excellent condition. Closer to lunch, Kisaragi Toya came out, yawning widely. The employee said she was worried because he didn't come to dinner yesterday, to which the guy replied that he was a little tired, so he immediately went to bed. She went to make him breakfast, and after a while brought food. The girl told him to eat more because he hadn't eaten anything yesterday. Kisaragi Toya was still feeling tired, but after he tasted the food, he brightened up, as the food turned out to be very tasty. The girl replied that it was because there was a lot of orc meat in it. The guy finished his meal, folded his palms in front of him and thanked him for the food. The employee asked about this gesture because it looked strange. She assumed it was some kind of gratitude for the food from his hometown. Toya agreed, but he thought that because it was a habit, nothing could be done about it. He went up to his room and lay down on the bed. The guy wondered if he could return to his world or if he could stay here for the rest of his life. Of course, the Henrietta Kingdom is also a country within the game. But this place is called the City of the Kingdom of Sarandi, Fandi, and he had never heard of such a thing. The young man doesn't even know if it's the same world as in the game or not, or if it's a different place altogether. What he is sure of is that he can use the storage. Kisaragi Toya waved his hand and a ring appeared, which is an auxiliary element for beginners. But it has the ridiculous effect that experience points are multiplied 100 times. It was given out to balance other players with high-level ones. In any case, the guy has to become stronger. Kisaragi Toya went to the forest south of the city of Fendi. He brought Kokyu with him and asked him to wait until he checked something. The guy went to the drinking trough to pour water for the horse with the help of everyday magic. Water appeared out of the air, which filled the tank. The horse came up and started drinking. The guy noticed that the horse was still pretty smart. He was told that there are no strong monsters in this place, but it's still different from the game, so he needs to be careful. He picked up the weapon and went on. There are a lot of monsters living in the forest, so it didn't take him long to find a few. The problem is, he was just an office worker. Would he be able to kill them? Kisaragi Toya was sitting in ambush behind a tree not far from the goblins. He hesitated a little, but still came out of ambush and attacked, deftly swinging his sword. The guy quickly dealt with a bunch of goblins, after which he immediately checked his status. He was very surprised because he raised 6 levels at a time, which means that the ring effect works. Now that Kisaragi Toya found out, he went to deal with all the small monsters along the way. After a while, he decided that it was time to return to Kokuya, and he put the defeated monsters in his storage. The guy somehow got out of the woods, where he saw his horse. Kokyu stood among the defeated goblins. The guy exclaimed and asked if the horse had coped by himself. As expected from a war horse, the young man counted about 30 corpses, after which he took care of them, putting them in storage. Kokyu was all sticky because of the blood, so Toya said that when he arrived he would wash him with magic. They returned to the city and went to the guild, where Milia, taking the loot, asked in shock how many monsters the guy had killed in one day. The young man awkwardly scratched his head and said that he was just carried away. He also added that there were still a bunch of orcs in the vault, But then the girl interrupted him and asked him to wait. Milia, under the sidelong glances of other adventurers, whispered to the guy that she would take him to the storage room at the back of the building. When they left, she explained that he should still keep it a secret that he could use the vault, all because it's a skill that many people desperately want to get their hands on. Other teams will try to recruit him if they find out about it. After this clarification, he thought it would be very troublesome. The man in the warehouse, when he saw the girl, immediately asked if she had brought them any materials. Then he turned his attention to the guy next to her and assumed that he was the one who brought the materials. The guy introduced himself as Dalek. He manages everything here. Kisaragi Toya introduced himself in response, and Dalek said that he had not heard of him, so the guy was a beginner. He asked where the materials were. Kisaragi thought it was okay if he told him, so he replied that they were in his vault. The warehouse manager was slightly surprised that the young man could use it and pointed to the countertop with the words that he could put everything on them. Toya hesitated and said that there were quite a lot of them. Dalek slapped him on the back and said they were professionals, so he shouldn't worry, they wouldn't judge him since he was a beginner. Kisaragi Toya waved his hand and began to spread out the materials. 200 goblin ears, 10 orc bodies, 10 wolves, 20, 30. The manager strained more and more with each new material. At some point, he shouted for the guy to stop. At this stage, the materials filled half of the warehouse. Dalek was caught, so he said they would do it for now, and the materials in the storage should not rot. However, he said that if it happens every time, it's not very good. Kisaragi Toya waved his hand and replied that he was not going to hunt in the near future. The manager suggested that the kid must be high-ranked, to which Milia replied that he had only recently become E-ranked. Toya explained that because of the goblin ears that others had collected for him, his level had risen. Dalek listened to all this and slapped the magician on the back again and said that an amazing newcomer had appeared in the guild. After they returned back to the registration, the girl informed that the evaluation of the material would be tomorrow afternoon, as well as that he would most likely rise in rank. Because if the Toya is E-rank, then the balance will be a little strange. The guy left it up to them. Milia asked him about his mage specialization because she couldn't believe it when he brought so many materials. She even had the idea that he was a berserker or something like that. As soon as the magician heard these words, he immediately asked if there was a berserker job. An invincible berserker who kills all his enemies he encounters on the battlefield. Someone who goes beyond a warrior, something that no one can achieve. The girl explained that in the end, it's just a legend, since they say that the 100th level is the limit. Later, the guy wondered if it could be that no one knows that you can change your work to achieve the 100th level. And is it even possible in this world to change jobs like in a game? However, with the effect of this ring, it is quite real, because at one time he rose to the 35th level. If he works hard, then this achievement will not be just a dream. The guy came to the decision that he was going to become a berserker in this world. He stroked the horse's head and asked if it would be next to him. Kokyu in response began to chew the guy's head, which he took for a positive answer. In this case, he needs to become stronger. They went back to the hotel with high spirits. As soon as they approached her, the owners of the Foxtail Rest apologized and asked the guy to leave the hotel tomorrow morning. The next day, Kisaragi Toya went to the guild, where he told about what had happened at the hotel. Milia was shocked that the guy was being kicked out. He explained that it was because Kokyu was scaring the other horses. Some of the guests had left because of it. For this reason, he asked the girl to find him another hotel. However, if this goes on, the same thing will happen. Therefore, the girl offered the young man to rent a mansion. Kisaragi Toya said it must be expensive. Milia said that there is also cheap real estate. But there is also a special condition. In addition, the owner is a little strange. They went to the owner of the building, who turned out to be Natalia from the store. She greeted the lady from the guild, and Milia said that they would like to talk about the mansion. The elf stretched lazily, since people never learn from mistakes, and then asked who the client was. Kisaragi Toya entered the building, and Natalia immediately recognized him. Milia was a little surprised that they knew each other, to which the guy said that he came here for shopping. The hostess listened to his story, and they went to the mansion. On the way, many people stared at them, because it's not every day you meet a war horse, so he is also much bigger than an ordinary horse. They came to some elite area, so Natalia's mansion is located in such a place. They approached the building and Kisaragi Toya was shocked, as the mansion is too luxurious. Natalia said that if he rents it, then you shouldn't worry about it, because it depends on the guy whether he can live in it or not. The young man sighed in bewilderment at such words. The elf stood on the threshold and called Ferris. Because of this, the magician thought that there were people inside, but he saw something strange coming down the stairs. Suddenly, a girl appeared out of thin air, who is the spirit of this mansion, in which only the one she recognizes can live. Natalia greeted her, and Kisaragi tried to figure out where she came from. Although this girl is beautiful, but her expression is completely empty, as if she were a doll. The guy asked Natalia about her words about the spirit of the mansion. He thought it was something like a ghost. Milia explained that the spirit of the mansion, as its name says, dwells in the mansion. This is the one who protects the house and brings good luck. However, the house spirit chooses who will live in the house. Even Natalia, being the owner, will not be able to live in it if she is not recognized. Kisaragi Toya asked how he could get a confession, to which the elf simply asked Ferris what she thought of him. She looked at him carefully and nodded slightly. Even Natalia was surprised, and then turned to the guy and said that he could live in this mansion. Milia happily said that it was amazing, because he was recognized by the spirit of the mansion. The guy stood awkwardly, as he did nothing. The elf looked at them and thought that not only the warhorse, but also the spirit of the mansion. They sat down, and Natalia said that his rent would be 150,000 gil per month. She usually doesn't lower the price below 1 million, but she gave him a discount. Kisaragi Toya calculated that 1,800,000 would come out in a year. He can afford such a price, so he agreed. They were hungry, so they decided to celebrate the deal. The guy conjured a cake, but the girls did not see this, so he explained that it was a confection. Natalia looked at him with a strange face and tasted a piece. Her eyes sparkled. She said it was so sweet and so delicious. Milia also enjoyed dessert, as it was also the first time she had tasted such a thing. Kisaragi Toya said that the power of sweets is scary, but he is glad that they liked it. A moment later, Natalia with an empty plate asked for some more. The guy replied that there was no more left, since he couldn't just take things out of storage. The elf was depressed, and then turned to him with a proposal that if she gave this mansion to him, he would give her some more of this cake. Kisaragi Toya jumped up from such a suggestion, and Milia asked what she was talking about. Natalia can't even live in this place anyway, as it's not such a bad deal. The former owner of the mansion was enjoying dessert. Milia asked if she could have a little, but the elf refused, in principle, as expected. Instead, she turned to the guy and said that if it was a contract of sale, then he needed to go to the merchant guild, where she would take him. They left the mansion, and Natalia, sparkling with happiness, said that if there was still such a thing left, then she was ready to eat at least a dozen. Kisaragi Toya never thought that he would exchange sweets for a mansion. Kokuya also seemed to like the place, as he was having fun rolling around on the grass. The procedure in the merchant guild was completed, so Kisaragi Toya was about to leave when the girl stopped him and informed him that he still had to pay the property tax, which this year is 2 million gil. The guy was shocked by this amount. The tax is so big because the mansion is quite expensive, and also because no one has lived in it until now, the amount has accumulated. Natalia didn't think, or rather, she didn't expect, that someone who Ferris recognizes would appear. They decided that they could not sell the mansion with the spirit to those whom he did not recognize. But Natalia is an exception in this case. The elf got up from the sofa and, waving to the guy, told him not to pay attention, and also to take care of Ferris. Kisaragi Toya felt so unusual because he never thought that he would have a luxurious mansion in another world. He was thinking about what he would do next. He waved his hand and told Kokuya that it was better for him to go back to the vault for now, and the horse really disappeared. The guy was very surprised, because he accidentally did it. He thought that in this world it is impossible to move living beings to the storage. Maybe it happened because Kokyu was originally a subject. This means that he didn't need this huge mansion at all. However, he can't keep the horse in storage all the time, so he got it back. Kokyu began to chew the guy's head more aggressively than usual. Kisaragi went inside the mansion and addressed Ferris with the words that he was at home. She immediately appeared in front of him, so the guy came to the conclusion that she understands him. He asked to take care of him, and also said that it was unexpected. But he asked to show this mansion to him. Toya thought she smiled, but immediately dismissed these thoughts. Perhaps his imagination was just playing out. Everyone said that the house spirit's facial expression doesn't change, and they also can't speak. Before other people know about it, the spirits will live in the house and guard it carefully. They say that the house in which the spirit lives is not destroyed and retains its current state as it is. However, the spirit of the house chooses its own master and master. Many people have wanted this mansion for many decades, but it seems Ferris has not recognized a single person. They looked around the house until they reached the bathroom. It turned out to be huge and very beautiful. Kisaragi Toya immediately asked if he could use it at any time, to which Ferris slowly nodded. As expected, since people in this world are like the Japanese, then there should definitely be a bath. For a guy to be able to use it every day is just wonderful. In any case, Ferris has done a good job maintaining this mansion. The guy needs to redo his lifestyle a little, raise the level and check his stuff. There is quite a lot of work to be done. He thought about everything and was about to get out of the bath when he saw Ferris. The guy immediately turned away and asked her to come out. He was told that the house spirit would take care of him, but even in the bathroom, Kisaragi Toya noticed that she brought him a new set of clothes, so he decided that he would have to thank her properly. The guy changed his clothes and sat down in a chair. It had been so long since he had taken such a bath. Ferris will do all the housework for him. The spirits of the house are really a great blessing. He was wondering why the spirit recognized him. He thought about asking her directly. However, he fell asleep while thinking about different things. Ferris covered him with a blanket, sat down next to him and looked at his face. In the morning, he packed up and informed her that he was leaving and would stay in the forest for 3 days, as he was going to make several guild requests, as well as raise his level a little. He asked her to take care of the mansion at this time. It seemed to him that she had a restless look, so he said that everything would be fine and explained that despite his appearance, he was quite strong, so he would return home soon. Kisaragi Toya sat on the fallen goblins and thought about working to pay for his house after coming to another world. The reward for the request should be enough, but he thought that maybe he should earn a little more money. After all, with the effect of this ring, its level rises much faster. Despite the fact that he told Ferris that he would be back in 3 days, the guy thought to stay a little longer. Ferris was patiently waiting for the owner of the house at this time. Kisaragi defeated all the monsters he met for several days and put them in his storage. Even if the number of items increased, he didn't feel any weight. During this adventure, he discovered various interesting things during the fights. For example, a weapon that had become blunt due to the blood of monsters became clean, and its sharpness was restored as soon as he put it back in storage and took it out again. The same thing happens with the mantle and other clothes. After a long hunt and recycling of materials, the time has finally come. The status has been opened, all thanks to a tricky ring that increases the experience gained 100 times. Kisaragi Toya has reached the 100th level and advanced on the path of becoming a berserker. He opened the function of changing jobs, so he, without thinking twice, chose a change to a warrior. However, completely different options for changing the profession appeared on the screen. The only jobs he can switch to are High Mage and High Priest. He drooped to the ground, because other work is also related to magic. He had already read the book and learned all the magic of recovery. If he becomes a high mage, he will continue to study magic. Kokyu attacked the guy's head again, and he sadly replied that he was in a bad condition now. He decided to continue hunting because it doesn't matter what his profession is as long as he has a sword. So Kisaragi Toya became the highest magician of the 1st level. His next goal was to bring the profession of the highest magician to the 100th level. Next, he would like to know what profession he can switch to next time. The guy does all this in order to become a berserker. He had finally returned home after being away for so long. Kisaragi Toya entered the house and called Ferris, apologizing for being late. She immediately appeared in front of him and with tears in her eyes said that she was very worried about him because he was late. The guy awkwardly tried to explain that he was too focused on raising the level. At some point, he realized that the girl could talk and was glad because he really wanted to talk to her. He immediately thanked her for looking after the mansion. At that time, somewhere in the city, Milia was talking to a man who found out that the guy he had high hopes for had bought a house in this city. The girl said that if a great adventurer like him settled in the city, it would help their guild a lot. The man replied that he had heard a lot of compliments about the guy from the Dalek team, so Subguildmaster Ebrand is looking forward to meeting Kisaragi Toya. The guy came to Milia and found out that his rank in the guild had suddenly jumped to C despite the fact that he had only recently raised his rank. Suddenly a man came out, with whom the girl spoke not so long ago, and said that this was a request from him. He introduced himself to the guy. Other adventurers immediately drew attention to him, so the man wished everyone a good morning and told them to continue to complete tasks and receive heaps of money. Everyone cheerfully supported his statement. He asked Kisaragi to borrow some of his time. They went to the materials development site, where one of the workers saw him and immediately reported it to Dalek, who was a little surprised. Workers with tears in their eyes shouted that the guy was forbidden to come there because they were still sorting out a bunch of materials from the last time. They weren't even ready to hear in jest that the guy brought even more. At Kisaragi's reaction, Toya thought it was better not to tell them that he still had plenty of everything in the vault. The man told him that the magician had become a full-fledged adventurer since he received the C rank. He also added that they will have enough materials for now. Kisaragi was embarrassed to notice that he was called full-fledged. The sub-guild master went on to say that he was waiting for the young man because he wanted to ask him to complete the task. This is the escort of merchants, which the guy immediately refused. The man, playing with the goblin's body, asked to reconsider his decision. Kisaragi Toya replied this way because, obviously, the task promises to be troublesome. Plus, he doesn't want to leave Ferris at home alone. But he said out loud in his defense that there was something he wanted to explore, so now he does not accept long-term assignments like someone's escort. By this time, Milia came running, who had finished updating the magician's card. It marked the 57th level and the profession of a magician, although after changing his profession he became a higher magician. However, it is not displayed in the card. For everything else, except for the level and age, to change in the card, you need a special tool. He is needed because, first of all, there is no person in this world who could change his name or profession, since maps are artifacts, the principle of which has not been fully studied until now. Precisely because of this, Kisaragi Toya does not need to worry that anyone will find out about his job change. The man said he couldn't believe it because he had heard that the guy was raising his level too fast, but it was all extremely abnormal. The highest adventurer rank in Fandi, a rank, and it took this person 20 years to reach the 42nd level. However, judging by his level, the guy should already be S rank. Toya was surprised that in this world it takes so much time to raise the level. Although if you think about it, no one here has an item multiplying experience points. They could not find out in any way that after reaching the 100th level, it would be possible to change their profession. The man said that if such a talent became known, he would no doubt be invited to work at the royal palace and would be held there in every possible way. Still, it's not so bad to work for the royal family, but his career as an adventurer will end. Kisaragi Toya frowned after the words about the royal family. He immediately remembered the day when he came to this world. Ebren noticed his reaction and came to the conclusion that it seemed that the magician himself did not want to work for the government. He offered to leave everything as it is and told the girl not to tell anyone about it. All the while they were talking, the man was quietly taking out a magic stone from the goblin, and when they finished, he wiped his hands and gave it to Dalek. He turned to the magician, reminding him that the young man had something he wanted to explore, and said that if so, then maybe he could help him. The man brought him to the materials room, which their guild is proud of. He said that it contains information about the history of this country, neighboring countries, and so on. So maybe he can find what he's looking for. Kisaragi Toya enthusiastically asked if everything was alright, to which the man replied that everything that could be seen here was precious. So the guy has to pay a reasonable price if he wants to use it all. He proposed a condition under which the guy accepts the previously proposed task from the man. And he, in turn, will make an exception, and Kisaragi Toya will be able to use everything for free. The magician thought that in any case he was thinking about the escort mission and, come to think of it, it's not such a bad deal. He agreed, so the man allowed the items to be used as the guy wants, but he is not allowed to take them out of this place. The man, leaving, said that they were leaving in 10 days, and the guy should not be late. Milia said she would go too, as she needed to sort out the paperwork. She added with a smile that even if the man said that there would be a payment for use, it would be equal to about 1 copper coin. In any case, very few people come to this place, and these precious books are ordinary manuscripts. But despite this, she was glad that the young man did not say that he wanted to give up the position of an adventurer. Kisaragi Toya, while leaving the room, realized that he had been deceived, and Ebrand is pretty good at such things. At the entrance to the building, he was met by an elf who was already tired of waiting. The guy asked what she needed from him, to which she awkwardly crumpled. Natalia replied with admiration that she could not forget the taste of this sweetness, as well as the fact that she had already eaten everything. She asked if Kisaragi Toya wasn't going to leave her like that. The elf was not sure if he was listening to her at all, and the guy replied that he would listen to her anyway. He thought that he just had a few questions about Ferris. They returned to the mansion, where they were met by Ferris, who greeted the owner. Kisaragi Toya also asked if anything had happened while he was away. The girl answered in the negative and asked why the guy came back so early. Natalia watched their conversation from the side in shock. Kisaragi was surprised that she didn't know about it either. The elf replied that she had never heard of the mansion's spirit being able to speak. She said a little dejectedly that she had lived in this mansion for a very long time, but there were so many things she didn't know about. Kisaragi Toya waved his hand to Natalia and said goodbye, to which she shouted at him to wait. The girl did not say that she wanted them for free. She offered the guy in exchange of a special class magic book and a book about search magic for a small amount of sweets. The magician wondered if there was a special class in the book, the same large-scale magic as in the game. It's definitely a great deal, so he agreed. At the same time, he invited her to have dinner with them, since she had come. As the guy expected from her, the elf exchanged 2 books for sweets. On the table there was an assorted grill with various types of meat, which restores the average amount of hunger. Toya told her to try it, but warned her that the food was hot. Natalia held out her fork to the food with disbelief and tasted it. She had never eaten such tender meat. She really liked it, so she began to eat the food very quickly. Kisaragi Toya turned around and noticed Ferris standing behind him. She, as always, did not eat anything. House spirits absorb the magical power of the earth and receive vital energy from it. The guy hoped that someday they could eat together and chat at the same table. Ferris flew up to the guy and said that when Toya is here, the magic power is delicious. He wondered about the fact that magic power has a taste. Natalia thought again that there seemed to be too many things she didn't know about. This guy is full of mysteries. In the end, they never came to a full conclusion about Ferris, and it seems that the elf really liked the chocolate cake that the magician showed her as she kept eating it. When she finished, she said it was time for her to go and began to pack. On the way out, she turned back and said that she wouldn't mind if Kisaragi Toya brought her souvenirs from time to time. The guy looked after her and thought that she really seriously came just to eat sweets. Natalia left him a special class magic book and a book of search magic. Kisaragi Toya began to study it and realized that theoretically, the magic of transfer in space is possible. Then, it's the magic they used on him in Henrietta Kingdom that teleported him to this place. Even so, it was still quite difficult for him to understand all this. Kisaragi Toya admired this book and wondered which genius wrote it. In search of an answer, he opened the first page with the authors and saw the name of Sage Natalia there. He was shocked why she was the one, although the book turned out to be interesting. Because of this, he wondered if it was possible for an elf to be such an amazing person. Before the day of departure for the escort mission, he needed to look into the materials room for his research, in order to get as much information about this world as possible. But when he opened the map inscribed on the parchment, Kisaragi Toya was taken aback. This is because the Henrietta Kingdom, the Lunada Empire, and the Sifansi Empire, which were familiar to him from the game, exist in this world. The guy hovered over the map. It's not that he didn't expect it. There are several countries here that he has never heard of. The Sarandi Kingdom he is currently in is one of them. He began to look for the city of Fandi, where he is now. A girl approached Kisaragi Toya from behind, who pointed out the city on the map and said that they were here. She stood close and asked the guy if he was studying the escort route. The magician, when he realized how close the girl was standing, screamed. She in turn apologized for scaring him. She asked Kisaragi Toya if he was and introduced herself as Lumina. She is the leader of this accompanying mission. The guy remembered that 2 more groups of adventurers would go with him. The girl yawned, as Ebrin called them early this morning, although her hangover from yesterday still hasn't gone away. Lumina waved her hand to him and said that it was nice to meet her, and also that she had high hopes for him. Kisaragi Toya didn't say anything, as he didn't know what to say to her. He returned to studying the map, and if you follow it, the Henrietta Kingdom is not so far away from them. Will he be able to return to his world if he goes there? At least they should have a clue. However, if he leaves this world so suddenly, the day of dispatch has arrived. Ferris raced with all her might to the owner, who was waiting for her with his war horse. She hasn't shown up since the guy told her he was going away for a while. He sat down in front of the girl and told her that he would be back in 8 days, at least in 10. The magician asked her to look after the house while he was away. Ferris asked the guy to hurry up and come back as soon as possible. From such words, he even doubted his participation in this mission. But they said goodbye anyway. Lumina informed the others that this time their task was to escort the merchants to the city of Dumbledore. Their job is to ensure the safety of cargo and merchants to their destination and back. She also informed the team that they had been notified of the appearance of high-ranking monsters along the main path, so everyone should be on alert. The Pasture Fangs team consisted of D-rank guys. Kisaragi Toya was approached by a man who recognized him. He had heard a lot about the guy from his friend. He said that the guy had helped him in the forest earlier. Apparently, he was talking about those merchants. The man said that the magician is very young for C rank. It seems he is a wonderful adventurer, so the man asked to take care of them. After completing the training camp, they finally set off. Kisaragi Toya talked to Kokyu about the need to hurry up and finish this mission in order to get home faster. Dal, a D-rank warrior, made fun of the guy because he looked too smug. Dal assumed that Kisaragi Toya got the C rank because he was in a strong team, since a magician like him would not be able to kill a goblin. The warrior told him not to pretend to be cool, just because he was higher in rank. After all, in any case, only they will be able to fight normally. The magician was not surprised and thought that Dal probably would not believe that Kisaragi Toya had done everything alone before. The guys were driving and Dal hoped out of boredom that a goblin would appear. His teammates asked him what he was talking about. It seemed to them that it was better when it was safe. The warrior turned to the magician and said that then they would not be able to show their real strength to this guy. He also added that he didn't want Kisaragi Toya to behave so arrogantly. Lumina appeared next to the magician, who said not to pay attention to him. She explained that during adventures, the people here look down on magicians. The guy wondered why this was happening, since healers are important to the team in games. Lumina explained that this is because the healers are always in the rear. If the vanguard is killed, the healer, who cannot attack, has no choice but to run so as not to get hurt. Especially for those teams where everyone is close to each other, no one wants to see their buddies abandoned to their fate. She added that if you fight with someone, you will surely understand. But being a healer isn't so bad either. Toya was interested in the girl's words about the connection between the team members. After all, joining the team is not so bad for him. Tokyu looked at the guy and he looked around. This was the right place, so Kisaragi Toya activated the search magic. This spell is a theory he took from a book on magic research that Natalie wrote. This is only a theory, but Kisaragi Toya completed it as his original spell. By subtly spreading magical power within himself, he creates a thread of magical power that senses the movements of surrounding enemies. He sensed 3 forest boars 300 meters away. He, using one attack spell, which he learned after he changed jobs to a high magician, created air blades and attacked boars. Toya waved his hand and thought that should be enough. By this point, Lumina came up. She asked if the guy had finished. Then she suddenly asked if the guy had ever eaten orc meat that he picked up from the ground. To Kisaragi Toya's puzzled face, she replied that she was just joking. Lumina added that at this pace they should get there soon, and the guy was only thinking that he wanted to go home faster to see Farah's cute face. He doesn't have time to deal with pathetic enemies. It was getting dark, so they set up camp. Dal and Milka, a D-rank thief, were sitting and eating dried meat. The warrior sadly asked Milka if there was anything besides him, to which she replied that there was nothing. Dal, seeing Kisaragi Toya approaching, who was looking around, said that it was normal to carry food with him. He waved a piece of meat towards the guy with a smile and asked if he wanted to eat their food too. The magician looked at him awkwardly and finally found the right place that he had been looking for all this time. Kisaragi Toya waved his hand and a table appeared on which there was a hot meal. There was a pot of soup, salad, bread and tea. The guy started picking up food for himself and said out loud that the food was still hot because it had just been cooked when he put it in his storage. He began to eat under the surprised looks of the team. Lumina came up and said that the food the magician eats looks so appetizing, while she only eats dried meat. Akina, also a member of the team, as well as a D-rank mage, said softly that the food looked delicious. Kisaragi Toya had many more, so he invited them to join him. The team sat down with him at the dinner table. Lumina, eating soup, said that she would never have thought that she would eat something like this in such a place. She added in a relaxed way that if there was a little more alcohol, it would be perfect. Milka turned to her and asked her to be patient until they reached the city. Kit, a D-rank archer, called Dal and asked if he wanted to join because the food was really delicious. The warrior nervously asked why he needed it, and then shouted in the direction of the magician that he had probably greased up to some strong team to go on this mission. The archer crossed his arms over his chest and replied that the magician was the owner of the storage skill. He's willing to bow his head to him since he reached C rank at that age, and then apologized because he might be too stubborn. They finally made it to Dumbledore Town unharmed. While the people were unloading the carts, Lumina talked to the man about how this time they were so lucky because they didn't come across any monsters. However, they cannot let their guard down when they return. Lumina noticed Toya and Kokyu at Kisaraga's side and wondered if she would never find out about the magician's power. They went to a tavern, where they decided to drink until they passed out, because tomorrow is their day off. Lumina approached the magician and said that he should drink too. Kisaragi Toya didn't exactly hate liquor, but he took a sip anyway. The ale in this world is so warm, which is why the guy couldn't drink it, but he remembered that he could use magic to make it colder. The girl noticed these machinations and asked what he was doing. The magician replied that he had just done something to improve his drink and invited the girl to try it. She took his mug and took a sip. It was cold and delicious, so she silently took her mug with a smile and pointed at it. The guy cooled the drink for her, and then almost the whole team tried it. Keith didn't know that the taste could change so much if you just cool the drink. Lumina approached the warrior and said that he should try it too. Dal began to refuse, but the girl hugged him around the neck and asked again, so he took and drank. Dal was thinking that the drink was just cooled down, so there could be such a thing in it. However, he really liked it, so Kisaragi Toya said he could do more, and then added with a smile that the magician could be quite useful. Dal smiled awkwardly and looked away. Suddenly, Lumina approached the magician and offered to have a serious conversation. She put her finger to his lips and told him to be with her forever and cool the ale for her. The next morning, Kisaragi Toya woke up and went outside thinking that if the team had drunk so much, then they must still be asleep. They are free for the whole day and can do what they want. Melia informed the guy before that if he was a member of the guild, it would be easy to find a job for him in this city, so he decided to go to the guild. There is not a single specialty that stands out in the city of Dumbledore, but as a trading city, it is very lively. After some time walking around the city, the guy found a guild. At the entrance, a little boy grabbed him by the jacket, who asked if the guy could use healing magic. Kisaragi Toya replied that he could and asked if the boy needed to heal the wound, to which he replied that it was not for him. The boy handed over 3 copper coins, which were his savings, and asked to cure the illness of his little sister Saya. He said he asked everyone, but they told him it wasn't enough. Someone waved his hand in the direction of the boy and asked why he was still walking around. 3 men were standing in front of them, and one of them said that he had already said that a stray child from the slums should not be here, and no adventurer would listen to his request with that kind of money. He began to swear at the boy, and then asked if the children from the orphanage did not receive a good education. Then this man turned to the magician with the words that the boy could not pay the money. He said that even if you amuse this boy, you won't get anything from him, and then he stretched out his hand to him. Kisaragi Toya intercepted her and, with the words that he did not remember asking his opinion, twisted the man's hand. He crouched down in pain, and his friends began to take out weapons to intercede for a friend. Suddenly, the girl loudly asked about what was going on and what these people were doing here. She loudly announced that fights at the guild are prohibited, so the men put away their weapons and began to leave. One of them turned around saying that he remembered it. The girl from the guild recognized these guys, and the boy turned to the magician again. Kisaragi Toya introduced himself and asked what the boy's name was, to which he replied Leal. The magician told the boy to give him all his money, and then patted him on the head and said that he accepted his offer. They moved not so far from the center as they found themselves in the slums. A trading city means that there is a large influx of people here. The boy called the magician and pointed to the side. Leal was met by other children who were very happy to see him and immediately asked how everything went. Leal replied that he had brought someone who could use healing magic. One girl enthusiastically asked the magician if he was a healer, and Kisaragi drew attention to a girl who was hiding behind a toy. They asked if he could heal his little sister, to which he replied in the affirmative and said to leave it to him. Kisaragi Toya asked if there were any adults in this place, to which he was told that there was not, so Sister Saya is doing everything possible. However, because she worked so hard, she became very ill. Lying on the bed was a girl who was about the same age as Kisaragi Toya now. She's the one taking care of all these kids. The children reported that it had been a whole week, but she was not getting better. The guy put his hand on her forehead to check the temperature, which turned out to be quite high. The children asked if she would recover, and then they cried. Kisaragi Toya repeated again that they should leave it to him. However, he is not a doctor, so the only thing he can do is carefully apply the healing spells he can use. After a while, Saya came to her senses. She got up and first of all ran to check on the guys. When she came out, she saw a table set in Kisaragi Toya, who said that there was a lot of food here, so they could eat as much as they wanted. The guys saw the girl and ran up to her, telling her that Kisaragi Toya cured her with his magic. The girl understood the situation and was very embarrassed because she was in a nightgown, so she quickly ran away to change clothes. When she returned, she thanked the magician for not only using magic to heal her, but also feeding the children. The girl was surprised because the pot appeared out of nowhere. Kisaragi Toya said that there was no need to worry about the payment, because he had already accepted an assignment from Leal. The guy added that he has no family. The girl was grateful and said that if there was something she could do, but at that moment her stomach rumbled loudly. The guy said that if everything was fine, then she could have lunch with them. They sat down at the table and began to eat. Saya was delighted with the soup, and she also added that there are so many ingredients in it. The magician asked her if she was running this place. It turned out that the girl's mother ran this place, but she died of an illness last year. Many people living in the area are those who lost their home or family during the invasion of the Henrietta Kingdom. The families of these children also died. There was only a girl left who could protect these children, and she was determined to fulfill this duty. Saya said the Henrietta Kingdom would pay for it. Kisaragi Toya said that it was not good to force yourself, to which the girl replied that it was for the good of everyone. He asked if the girl knew that Leal was desperately trying to ask everyone on the street to help her. Everyone wanted to be useful to her. That's why he said it's okay to rely on others. The girl started crying, and then said that she understood. Kisaragi Toya tried to calm her down, which is why Seiya apologized and said that he misunderstood everything. The children who were watching them through the window began to call them a sweet couple, which confused both of them very much. It was getting dark outside, so Toya started packing. The children, noticing this, asked if he was leaving. Kisaragi Toya replied that he was leaving this city tomorrow, and then took out a pot from the storage. He said he would leave them some soup, so they should all eat. The girl was very surprised that the pot appeared out of nowhere. Everyone went out to see the guy off, and Leal, standing next to Seiya, told Kisaragi Toya to come again, because his sister also wants it. The magician replied that if he was in this city, he would definitely come to them. They waved after him with wide smiles. Kisaragi Toya was worried about those kids, but what can he do? While he was walking back, an old man came up to him and asked him to treat him to ale. The guy tried to refuse, but the man did not give up. He even said that he knows a good place where there are girls. The guy tried to leave, when suddenly the man fell to the ground. He was hit by a man with whom they had a fight at the guild in the city. They searched for him for a long time and finally found him. The man with the sword in his hand said with a smile that he had slightly touched him, and the old man was just exaggerating. Kisaragi Toya rushed to his aid, and the man was lying on the floor and muttering that he was in pain. The man cheerfully said that the magician was an important person this afternoon, and then asked if the guy was really one of those people who become pitiful in front of others. He also added that he can only tell by looking at him that he has high-quality equipment. From all this, they came to the conclusion that the magician is some kind of rich guy. They said that this place is a slum, so if one adventurer dies here, no one will notice it. The old man, lying on the ground, told the guy to run away because he shouldn't mess with them. Kisaragi Toya said not to worry and used healing magic. The old man's back didn't hurt anymore, so the magician told him to hurry up and get out of here. The adventurers concluded that the guy is a priest, and they only run away well, and succeed. The man grabbed Toyu by the collar of Kisaragi and said that if he ran away, they would take care of the boy he was with during the day. The old man quickly ran away screaming, and the man continued to say that there is a beautiful girl in the place where those children live, which they will also take care of. He continued to approach the magician and provoke. Kisaragi Toya waved his hand and in it Buster's sword, the handle of which hit the man's jaw with such force that he flew off to the side. They were surprised that the magician has a storage skill. Kisaragi Toya decided to do what he likes. The guy has never fought one-on-one in real life, but Seiya and the kids will be in danger if he just leaves these guys. The men said emphatically that the guy is a profession that uses magic, so they can't be scared by such a bluff. The magician tried to remember how he would have done it in the game and began to attack. A few deft sword strikes and the opponents were defeated. They were shocked that the guy uses a sword and fighting skills, although in theory he is an ordinary priest. Kisaragi Toya stood and thought about what had just happened. Anyone can become an adventurer, no matter how rotten that person is inside. The man tried to run away, but the old man who supported the magician stood in his way. So he shouted at him to get out of the way and tried to hit him with a sword. However, his weapon broke in half. The man trembled and turned to the magician, who, stretching out 2 fingers, told him to stop behaving this way. The magician was serious. He said that at this rate he would not be able to restrain himself from beating the man. They returned to the city, to the Adventurers Guild. Kisaragi Toya tied up the men and gave them to the girl who sent them to the dungeon. As the guy expected, it turned out to be quite pleasant to fight. The girl from the guild said that they had already had these 3 under suspicion, but so far they had no proof. However, this time they have a witness, and they will finally be able to bring them to justice. She turned to the guy and asked for forgiveness for involving a person from another city in their problems. She asked if there was anything she could help with, to which Kisaragi Toya immediately said that there was a girl named Seiya who had a shelter in the slums. The magician wanted the guild to take care of the children in that orphanage. They're still small, but they live in a place where people like those guys live. The girl replied that the guild would take responsibility for this shelter. Then she added that there are such good adventurers in Fandi. Kisaragi Toya turned to the old man and said that he would go, since he had to get up early. He was glad that he didn't have to worry about Seiya and the kids anymore. And I also thought that I would need to buy souvenirs for Natalia. Meanwhile, the elf in Fandi, standing at the guild's reception desk, was shocked that the magician would be gone for a while, which means that she would not be able to eat his cooking. Milia replied that he would be back in 2 days, and Natalia was only thinking about what she had now. The adventurer looked at her and asked what kind of child she was, and the other person replied that she was an elf in charge of a magic tool shop who proclaimed herself a sage. She paid attention to these men, and then, apologizing for the trouble, was about to leave, but Milia called her because she wanted to ask something. They went to Natalia's store, where they sat down to drink tea. The girl said that she had become Kisaragi Toya's personal secretary, so Natalia assumed that the question would be about the magician. Milia asked if anything seemed strange when he was received by the spirit of the house. The elf said she didn't know and it was up to the spirit of the house to decide. However, there are people who have been loved by spirits since birth, and she knew such a person. When she lived in that country, Natalia was a magician of the immortal shrine. Milia interrupted her with a question about the fact that the elf was such an important person. Despite this, it is still quite important. The country she lived in was different from countries where the human race outnumbered others, like the Henrietta Kingdom, a place where the most diverse races could live without oppression. Natalia's abilities were recognized, and she worked there for quite a long time as a magician of the immortal shrine. After the invasions of the Henrietta Kingdom subsided, Natalia decided it was time to leave her position, and also because the ruler has grown into a beautiful emperor. He asked her what she was going to do after leaving the palace, to which she replied that she was going to relax and go on a trip. She would settle down somewhere and open her own shop, and she was also thinking about a way to achieve the goal of becoming a supreme sage, which was written about in an ancient book in an elven village. The emperor, knowing her, was confident that she would be able to achieve this. He told Natalia to show herself to Charlotte one last time before leaving the country, because she loves her very much. The king had a daughter named Charlotte, and this girl was given a special power at birth, the ability to be loved by spirits. Natalia came to Charlotte, who was communicating with spirits at that moment. The elf has always been inside the castle, ever since the emperor was a child, but Natalia still asked the girl to call her not aunt, but elder sister. Charlotte asked if Natalia was going somewhere, to which she replied that this place was not so far away, and she would probably return when the girl was already a bride. Natalia said that the girl is the future empress, so she is an integral part for the good future of this country. She also added that the spirits love Charlotte, and one day she will grow up and be able to use their magic. They were interrupted by a girl who was looking for a princess. She asked her to come back immediately because the music teacher was furious. Charlotte turned to Archeria and sadly said that the teacher scolds her when she does something wrong. Natalia told Archeria that it must be difficult to look after Charlotte, to which the girl replied that the princess was already 5 years old, and she was behaving so carelessly. Archeria asked why Natalia is called a lowly sage. The elf woman with a menacing look asked who said it, because she would personally teach a lesson that they would never forget. The girls quickly began to pack up and leave. 10 years have passed since then, so Natalia hopes that those children were brought up properly. It's not that Ferris didn't recognize her when she bought this mansion. It just seems like there was a little misunderstanding with the merchant guild. Of course Ferris allowed her to live in this mansion. She just thought that a mansion with a spirit, it's quite interesting. Milia asked what then needs to be done so that the spirit recognizes you. Natalia replied that there are many things in this world that she does not know about. She thought about these things, because if there really is a way to become a sage, then it must be Kisaragi Toya. The guy was already on his way back at that time. They decided to set up camp, and Lumina said she hoped it would be as peaceful as it had been throughout their journey. She looked at Kokyu and said how good it is to have a war horse, and every adventurer dreams of such a thing. Kisaragi Toya said that it just happened to fall into his hands because he couldn't say that it was just lying in his storage. She asked what Dal thought about it, to which the warrior replied that the guy just wanted to stand out, but since he cooled his ale, it's worth admitting that he's not bad. The magician noted that Dal's attitude had changed since he cooled his ale. Suddenly Kisaragi Toya noticed something, so he immediately used search magic. He found a group of monsters, but the guy wouldn't be able to defeat them using only long-range magic. But there were too many of them. He informed Lumina that a group of monsters was coming at them. She knew by the sound that they were orcs.